There's no time.
The time is
13
o'clock.
Delay isn't very much.
Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Wednesday once again. Man, this is episode 299.
Can't believe it.
We're almost at 300 episodes.
Ridiculous.
And well, the 300 episodes just counting the main episodes. That doesn't even count like all the fucking movie reviews that we've done and fucking all the other fucking shit we did.
Time flies.
You know, and movie reviews that I did and book reviews that I did like
Yeah.
on my own. There's all kinds
Gonna
of
be
like,
more than that. Yeah.
holy crap, we've just made so much fucking content. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yep. I'm drinking my damn tequila sunrise, man.
What else is new? Whatever
No, I'm
happened to
just
you?
starting.
You don't do your Kukulkan anymore.
I don't do that much anymore, do I?
No, you don't. That was
I
like
can get
your
back on
that
that.
was like your signature drink. I'm not making you if you don't
It's
want
because
to.
it's just because I started to go for the just more simple.
Yeah.
You know? I've been rushing it.
Been rushing it. You gotta take
Yeah.
your time with that
Yeah,
shit.
just kind of like boom. Okay, I'm just gonna do this.
Although
Trying
I
to
get it.
simplify everything. You know?
Yeah.
Then we don't have to buy all those different juices.
That's true.
You know.
That's true.
We can just
It
settle
is
on
kinda
orange
like-
juice and both drink it.
Well, yeah, because we can both drink that in
Yeah.
the same thing because we both like
Right.
that instead of having to get mango and pineapple. And all
Right.
that stuff. Although you could just get pineapple because pineapple juice is good in vodka too, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I don't need
got
that
some.
shit. But yeah. So hey everybody, welcome to episode 299. We're gonna be talking about Bob Happy Little Trees.
Yeah.
Ross.
Bob Ross, no relation to me.
Well, not that you know of.
No. I would have heard about it.
Probably
Would
not.
have heard about it. He's talking about his happy little trees, and over here, this is where Waterfall lives. And we're gonna paint that waterfall. Look at the little waterfall right here. This and that. And over here, we're gonna put a little red house, because of course we need a red house over here. Just this happy little red house nestled up in the back of the forest, next to all these happy trees. Then you get your blade out. Okay.
Please tell me somebody's done like a horror Bob Ross
Yeah,
crossover.
yeah.
I mean, somebody must have. Yeah, I kind of feel like it's really weird because, I mean, I grew up watching this guy like from when I was probably when did he start on TV? Like 1983, 1984.
I thought
So
70s, but maybe.
no. I mean, he was around before that, but nobody really knew who he was until like the early 80s.
Just see him on PBS all the time.
Yeah, and like so I used to watch like not just his show, but I watched kind of like all the painting shows and like some of the book shows too, like the Book Bird and stuff like that with John Robbins. So I watched a lot of PBS when I was, 11, 12 years old. So I used to see this all the time. And it's really funny until I kind of like looked into Bob Ross's background. I didn't realize, I thought this was like he was a particularly American phenomenon, but apparently not. He's actually, they still show his shows all over the world. And I'm talking about like,
In English?
well, they're, they dub it over. But into whatever language.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's exactly the same experience. Well, I mean, they'll I guess they put closed captioning or, subtitles or whatever.
Yeah.
Because you do kind of need the voice. That's like
Yeah.
part of the whole experience.
Oh, yeah,
but yeah,
the voice is good.
they show it in Asia, it's like in Japan, South Korea, it's on in the Middle East, like it's on in Iran, and Turkey, and fucking Germany, and UK, it's on everywhere. So I was just kind of like, well, yeah, I mean, the guy has reached pretty much like global saturation at this point. And I never really thought of like doing a show about him until a couple people recommended it. And I was like, you know what, that might be a pretty good idea because I don't know if you guys know, but last year, I don't remember what month it was, but Netflix put out a documentary called Bob Ross, Happy Accidents, Betrayal, and Greed. And I watched it when it came out, but I watched it again last night. And it's actually like really interesting. Like, don't be scared. It's not one of those things where, because I saw that title and I was like, oh no, are they gonna tell me that like the lovely Bob Ross is really like this horrible human being? No, it's nothing like that. He's a lovely human being. Apparently, everybody that knew him said he was just like he was on the show. He's not a perfect guy, but nobody is. It was kind of more about the shenanigans that happened, like, with his business partners, which we'll get into. And I'm going to say at the beginning, everything in here is allegedly, because I don't want the motherfuckers to sue me, because apparently they're kind of sue happy. Well, allegedly. Allegedly. I'm just saying some people are saying. Yeah. Some people that know them have said that they're kind of sue happy, so you have to like really be really careful like what you say about them. But other people have made videos about it. I watched one earlier today. I can't remember the guy's channel, but I just like subscribed to him, and he made like an hour-long video. He doesn't usually do videos like this. He does like video games and shit like that. But he's like, I love Bob Ross so much, and he looked younger. He's probably like in his 30s or something. He's like, and I love Bob Ross so much that I want to do like a deep dive. So he did like an hour and 15-minute long video on it. It's really, really funny. And you probably find it, like, because I found it pretty easy. And there's also another documentary about him that I think came out in 2011, which is called Bob Ross, the Happy Painter, which is a lot more kind of like warm and cuddly type thing. And it has kind of like fans of his that are talking and like, you know, has like clips from the show and everything like that. So that's also on YouTube, which I watch for free, or you can rent it on Amazon if you want to for $2.99. But I watched it for free. And like I said, I think it came out in 2011. The Netflix one is mostly based around his son, Steve, and some friends of his, and talking about, like I said, all the conflicts that came into with it goes into his past and stuff like that, but it kind of goes more into what happened, like, when he was dying or after he died, and, like, what happened with BRI, like, Bob Ross Incorporated, like the company. So we'll get into that as well, because that's actually like pretty interesting. And you know, it's interesting too because Bob Ross was like, it's not impossible, but it's kind of like hard to find real deep dive stuff like about his background, because he was like a real private person, and basically he just wanted to like paint and teach other people how to paint, and he didn't really want, like, I guess sometimes, like, when he got real famous and he would be on talk shows and shit like that, and people would ask him about kind of his personal life, and he always just kind of, like, deflected this question. He just thought it wasn't relevant, which, you know, I totally respect that. He was just like, you know, it's nobody's business. I don't really think there was anything, like, horrible going on behind the scenes or anything like that, but, you know, there were a few things that his son Steve talked about on the documentary, which I'll get into, but it seems like pretty much everybody that knew him thought he was a great guy, and said what you see on the TV show is pretty much exactly what he was like. They said, other than, you know, they said he'd like cut up a lot more, like kind of, you know, do like joke around more than he did on the show. But they're like, other than that, he was just like a lovely person. And I didn't hear anybody say anything otherwise. So all the stuff that was sort of like negative in the Netflix one was not directed at him. It was directed at the business partners. So, but like I said, we'll get into that. Fourth showdown, Bob Ross burned a tree for everyone that he painted. That's what I mean. It's just kind of like, it would be like if somebody put out, because I kind of feel like the reason I think that he still resonates with a lot of people today, and it's not just like old people, like people our age, it's younger people. I read some shit about like some people because he kind of had a resurgence like on Twitch like back in 2015, and so a lot of like really younger gamers like got into him because of, you know, his voice and everything, and they're like, oh my god, this is like so relaxing and everything. And so he kind of had a little bit of a resurgence, and a lot of people that got into him didn't realize that he had died like a really long time ago. You know what I mean? Because they would just like see these videos of him and just assume that he was like still around, which I thought was like really kind of, yeah, he died a long time ago. He died in 1995. He died fairly young.
Yeah, I used to see him on
52.
Oh yeah, it's young. Used to see him on PBS all the time. Used to watch him. Used to watch Justin Wilson cooking Cajun.
Yeah, he's great.
Yan Can't Cook. Remember that guy?
Yeah, Martin Yan. I love that guy.
Yeah.
What is that dude doing nowadays?
I don't know.
Is he still alive? He's got to be like, he's probably got to be 80 by now.
There was a bunch of them on there that I used to watch.
Yeah, I used to love all that PBS.
The old Doctor Who episodes. Tom Baker.
PBS used to be the shit, man.
Yeah, you can have that. I was thinking about getting that upgrade. It's called BritBox. It's an app.
Yeah,
and
I've heard of that.
It's like $6.99, and it'll allow you to watch all $6.99 a month. It'll allow you to watch all the old Doctor Who episodes, and then I just cancel it afterwards.
I mean, they got a lot of good shit on there otherwise. Though.
Yeah,
I don't know what they have like as far as really old.
Stuff.
Yeah, as far as really old stuff. Like
Yeah.
I don't know if they have like the young ones of the comic strip or
They might, because they had all those old Doctor
Only
Who's.
Fools and Horses and stuff like that. Like all that old shit that I used
They
to
had
like.
those old Doctor Who's going all the way back to the '60s.
Well, see, that might be worth watching. And they have like good shit on recently too. You know.
Yeah.
What was that show that I really got into? It's like, it's been a long time ago now. It's probably like 10 or 20 years ago, but what was that one with like fucking Helen Mirren? Like she played a detective or some shit like that. I can't remember what it was. Prime Suspect? Something like that. It was something like that. It was like a investigation type, like a mystery type thing. John Smith says, I love Bob Ross. His show was great for just going somewhere which was tranquil with a nice person. I think that's kind of what everybody got out of it because... You know, I kind of feel like, one, a lot of entertainment, even back then, was just very, like, screechy and everything. Everybody had to be, like, jumping up and down and flashing shit in your face all the time. And so it was kind of nice just to, like, chill out for half an hour just with somebody that just was kind of, like, soothing and, like, just, like, whispering to you. Even if you didn't, like, paint or didn't, like, want to paint, it was still, like, interesting, like, watching him because he would just, like, kind of talk very softly and he was really good at what he did and he would paint the shit in, like, 26 minutes or however long it was. And you could just like watch it and it was kind of like magically appearing on the thing. So I kind of feel like there was that. And there's also the thing too, and I kind of feel like this is maybe why younger people resonate with him too. Same with like Mr. Rogers, like why people still talk about Mr. Rogers, you know, from the same era, is that he just seems like a genuinely nice person. And you don't really get that. Like even sometimes when, you know, you have a TV show or a movie star or a celebrity or whatever, and, like, they seem like a nice person, but then you find out, oh, they're a child molester, or they kick puppies, or something. Like, you find out something really bad about them, and you're like, bleh. Why isn't there anybody that's just, like, a genuinely good person that's famous, but he actually was that?
John Smith said, did Bob Ross invent AMSR videos? Yeah, basically
They do call him the godfather of it. They didn't basically know what that was back then.
Yeah, no such word.
But basically now he is like the acknowledged godfather. If he was doing it without really like realizing.
Yeah, but so was Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers was doing that too with children.
Yeah, it was the same kind of thing.
Now some people have surmised. I saw a thing, you know, because there's a couple of AMSR channels I'd listen to go to sleep. Little Chinese girl that pretends to be brushing your hair. Or fucking
hair brushing is a big ASMR thing.
Or another one that'll put you to sleep is she's doing the Chinese fucking rocks on your back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that one will put you to sleep. And they're saying that they think that and it kind of reminds me of being a kid. They say that it comes from animals in, what do you call them? Litters. That when they're up next to each other nursing the mother or just sleeping, that they're getting that AMSR feeling and that humans have inherited it. And I did remember getting that as a child. If you're around with your little friends, you're like 1 or 2 years old, and you'd get that kind of like that AMSR feeling if everybody was quiet. And that's what it's activating, I believe.
Yeah, because some people get that like tingly feeling when they have certain stimulants, usually auditory. Sometimes visual can do it too, but it's usually auditory.
Yeah, it's instinct. It's to keep you in the brood next to the mother. That's what I think is going on.
Maybe that's why I like to put my head against Pookie's head, like when she's purring, like. Right. Then I make the same noise at her.
To keep the whole nest together.
Thank you, Zach.
What'd Zach say?
One of my favorite YouTube videos is a guy following along with one of Bob's tutorials in Microsoft Paint, of all things, and the final result actually looked great.
Yeah.
Well, see, the thing about him was that the technique that he taught, and we'll get into the whole, like, where he got that from and stuff like that, because that's, like, pretty interesting, too. But the technique that he taught was specifically for people that had always wanted to paint but were scared to or didn't think they'd be any good at it or anything like that. It's very easy to learn. It's pretty easy to master. And you can actually get kind of up and running without too much. Because, I mean, oil painting, traditional oil painting, is very expensive. Which I know because my ex-husband used to do it. Yeah. So, all of the shit that you have to buy, it's ridiculously expensive. If you want to paint, like, because he painted it like a traditional style, like Rembrandt. So, yeah, it's really expensive. This one was, like, way cheaper. and way quicker, and you could come up with something that looked like pretty fucking decent. It's not like, you know, it's not going to hang in the fucking Louvre or anything like that, but, you know, you could like point to it and go, hey, I made that. And that was kind of like what his main deal was. He didn't really care, which, you know, I'll get into this later, but he didn't really care that his stuff wasn't like fine art or people like picked on his art. It was like, oh, it's like shit that hangs in hotels or whatever. He's like, that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to teach people that they can create something from nothing and they shouldn't be afraid to make something, you know what I mean? And he's like, that's all I really care about. It doesn't have to be fine art or nothing like that, just something that you made that you're proud of. And he's like, and as long as people do that, then he's happy, you know what I mean?
I'm gonna go ahead and plug that AMSR channel because I remember the name of it. It was called, it's here on YouTube, it's called Ting Ting AMSR. She's huge. She's got millions of followers, millions, and she's fucking great. She's got
that's like
shit ton of videos.
It's a whole subgenre.
Yeah, and she's got a real strong Chinese accent, and there's something about that accent that makes me zone out. Maybe it's from, you know, partially growing up in Korea, because the Korean accent when they're speaking English kind of sounds like that too. It just sounds like it sounds like the voice of somebody you paid to provide some kind of service, like cut your hair or something. You know what I mean? It's just because she's very like professional. She's the librarian. She's the stewardess. She has all the little videos, and it's just this voice, and you just fucking zone out. She'll be in a costume, too, role playing that. You know, taking your order on the airplane. And you got that one really put me to sleep.
Because does it have like the airplane noise in the background?
Yeah, jet turbines. Jet turbines put me to sleep, and
see, I don't like that. That just stresses me out because I hate flying planes.
I love it. Flying
that just makes me stressed out.
Flying since I was a little kid, and then coming up in the 101st around those jet turbines, on those choppers, and fucking sleeping on flight lines, and just doing all that shit, and just, you know, packing up fucking C5 Galaxies and flying around, and during deployments, there's just something. Being around all your buddies flying around all those jet engines, and everybody's sleeping in shifts because it's just a mass of fucking humanity fucking packed up, moving, and everybody knows each other, you know. And I could fall asleep just fucking laying on my back on the middle of fucking tarmac, my head fucking on the back of my damn butt pack on my LCE, and fucking your friends fucking, hey man, get up, here, smoke this, you know, giving you a cigarette, wake you up to give you a cigarette, you know. They just did all kinds of shit. Just a funny world. You guys, you service guys know what I'm talking about. You came up with that too, but just something real comforting about jet turbines.
Fourth Row Down says Bob Ross Bounty Hunter never made it to air. Although I kind of feel like probably somebody should make that. Yeah. Well, isn't it just kind of like, wasn't there like a few years ago, kind of an urban legend, or like they made a movie or something like that? That game show host, what was his name? Chuck Barris was actually like a secret agent or a CIA assassin or something
that was on a movie,
like that.
wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was an urban legend like before that. But yeah. John Smith says, I listen to a podcast about slasher movies. Hysteria continues to help me sleep. Make of that what you will. Honestly, the closest I have to ASMR is Dan Bell, because I wish that he would make more of his quiet time videos. Well, the thing is, okay, he makes a lot of them, but I think they're mostly on his Patreon, which I am on his Patreon, but I always forget that I'm on his Patreon, and I could go listen to the quiet time videos more. But he has like some that are on YouTube that are really long, and he specifically tries to, I mean, he doesn't have an ASMR channel, but so many people wrote to him and said, oh my god, your voice is like so relaxing and I fall asleep to it. So he started doing these quiet time videos with, you know, other video footage that he wasn't using for anything else. And the funny thing though is that sometimes he'll try to do ASMR, so he'll try to like whisper and stuff, and then like he'll crack himself up and like like mess it up because that's not really his thing.
You must be talking about
Dan Bell. Yeah
he's a genius
he has
editor.
He has like a really good voice too.
His voice and his editing is fantastic. He's got one. Go to Dan Bell and go quiet time, and fucking he'll put you to sleep. Like I've said it many times on the show before. I can't go to sleep in silence. I have to have, because my brain just runs. I have hypervigilance, so my brain just constantly runs. And when it gets, the quieter it gets, the more my alert status goes up. So I have to. The louder it is, the more calm I am. It's like a sign of safety for me. So it's just I don't know.
See, I'm the opposite.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing about it, like my brain runs all the time too, but honestly, if I'm watching something that's noisy, then I'm just like, oh, I got to pay attention to that, blah, blah, blah. So that'll like keep me awake.
No, I block it out.
Usually.
I block it out, which fucking makes me relax. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, because then if I hear something,
Right.
like if I'm watching a movie or something like that, like I'll hear something on there, I'm like, oh my god, that reminds me of blah blah blah, and then I'll be off like thinking of 40 bajillion other things, and then it's 6 in the morning.
But if somebody's talking to me and it's relaxing, I'll fall asleep.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like they're on guard, so I don't have to be awake. They're handling it. You know, I can trust them. It's that kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John Smith said there's a funny YouTube video of very drunk Irish people attempting to follow a Bob Ross tutorial with mixed results. I'm gonna have to watch that. That sounds fucking hilarious. Oracle says it's a painting you won't be ashamed of. Yeah, what I was talking about earlier. Though he also deserved credit for emphasizing that the whole point is to have fun and enjoy it. That's kind of like what... Yeah, and I really like that he was... Honestly, and it wasn't just about painting, it was about any kind of creative endeavor, or just like about life in general, really. He was just so chill, and like the attitude that he had to life was just really... I mean, it just resonated with a lot of people, I guess, because he was just kind of like... You know, his whole thing about we don't have mistakes, we just make, it's just happy accidents. You know what I mean? And kind of like trying to make something good out of, you know, to like overcoming obstacles and stuff like that. You know, if you mess up the painting, it's okay. You could just blur it, just make it something else. You know what I mean? So I kind of feel like this, you know, the sort of lessons that he taught it's not just painting. It kind of goes across life in general. And I kind of feel like a lot of people related to him for that reason, because he was like just seemed like such a nice, chill dude, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's maniacs saying that there's a rumor that he was a sniper in Vietnam. That same rumor was about, what's his name? John Denver, singer, John Denver.
Yeah, I kind of feel like they say that about every celebrity that seems too nice for this world.
Anybody who's mild-mannered, then, he was something deadly in the Army.
Now, it is true that Bob Ross was in the military for a long time.
And I think Glenn,
and he did actually have to like yell at people like all the time, and he didn't like it. That's why he said after I get out of the military, he was in the military for 15, 20 years.
Yeah, I think John Denver was fucking in the military for a while, but I vaguely remember checking that myth, and it turns out he wasn't a sniper though. He did something else.
Yeah, Bob Ross wasn't a sniper.
No,
either.
but neither was John Denver.
Yeah.
Although I think John Denver did do something. I was like, he did. I think it might have been something with the Air Force. I don't remember what it was. It was kind of interesting, but it wasn't a sniper. I worked with snipers in the 1st 327 Recon. Our 4th squad was a sniper spotter squad. I was in 1st squad. I was a recon scout. I carried the M203 or the fucking... each team, you know, was an M203 gunner or an RTO, which carried the radio. I've done both. But our snipers were our overwatch. They were our protection. But if everything was going by the book. So when you talk about the snipers, I think of fucking the snipers that I worked with. You know, they're nothing like Bob Ross. They're just country boys, you know. Kind of guys that would do deer hunting and stuff. They're good dudes, you know, but kind of quiet, you know. That sniper course is tough, real tough. I think it's fucking only half of them make it, and then they come back. But a lot of it is like shit that you wouldn't think of. A lot of it has to do with fucking passing camouflage standards and just real meticulous making ghillie suits, and then the other half of it is all that marksmanship stuff, and they got to like hit man-sized targets out to I think fucking 1,000 meters or 1,100 meters. I don't remember what it was. Most of it's at 900, but some of those shots are really long, and they got to do them, or they don't make it. But there's like some course that they had to go through, and they couldn't be spotted when they went through it, and how they judged whether or not you could have been seen. It was kind of iffy back in the 90s, and luck had a lot to do with all those courses, man. You know, fucking, I didn't make it through Ranger School because of luck. You know, which is during the pre-ranger trials. Just coming up, I had to swim down 12 feet into the swimming pool, full gear with my rifle and the helmet and everything, and get a damn rucksack, which is a backpack for you civilians, and bring it up off the bottom of the pool and fucking come all the way up. And you had to do it within a certain amount of time limit. And I dropped the rifle on the way up, and there's not enough time to go down and get it. So that's it. You get pulled up. That was the last no-go. There was 2 other ones. There's 3 no-goes during that pre-rip fucking trial thing that we did. I forgot what it was called. But a lot of it's just luck. You know? Bad luck. Which that's part of the military motif, man. Dice and cards, and you're gambling with your life. So, you got to have good luck.
John Smith said, my mother said I was a happy accident. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people's moms said that. DJ Maniac says, the thing is, Bob Ross studied under Wilhelm Alexander. Yeah, we'll get into that shortly. And he was the complete opposite of Ross in terms of tone. Yeah, I remember, because I used to watch that guy too. Wilhelm Alexander would scream about everything through the entire lesson. If you learned to paint watching a show, it was completely incidental. Yeah, that dude... He wasn't angry. He was just like really
intense, huh?
Boisterous. Yeah. He was very boisterous. And, he had a really, really thick German accent. And, no offense to like German speakers, but German, at least to English speaking ears, does sound like very harsh. So he did come across as like sounding like the almighty brush, and then he'd like poking at the canvas and shit like that. So yeah, so I kind of feel like there was, I don't know if Bob Ross, because I kind of feel like, his natural sort of personality came through, but I do think there was like a deliberate, kind of a deliberate decision to go the opposite way to what Bill Alexander was doing, because Bill Alexander was like kind of real hyper. And I think Bob Ross, or at least like his business partners, were kind of like, most of the people watching this show are probably women, and they probably don't want some dude like shouting at them constantly, like while they're trying to learn to paint. So maybe you should just like chill the fuck out a little bit. Although, who's to say, because Bill Alexander was like really, really successful too. Yeah, and we'll get into that too, because I kind of feel like a lot of stuff that people... This is a spoiler alert, but a lot of stuff that people attribute to Bob Ross, like a lot of his catchphrases and stuff like that, actually came from Bill Alexander. Like, Bill Alexander said them first. He said happy little clouds and happy little trees and shit like that. He said all that. It's just that, he taught Bob Ross, and Bob Ross got more famous than him after, and they were friends for a while, but then Bill got a little pissed off about it later.
Lars is asking, how much is an original Bob Ross painting?
Well, see, that's the thing.
There's probably a lot of them out there.
No.
There isn't?
There are, because he painted like... He estimated something like 20,000 paintings. I believe it. But the thing about it is that his business partners, the Kowalskis, which we'll get into, they don't sell them. They don't display them. They basically have them in marked boxes, like in their warehouse.
Why would they do that?
I'm not entirely sure why.
They have the right to sell them if they want to?
I guess they do.
Okay.
But they just don't for whatever reason. Okay. Now, so they have them, but the weird thing about it is that, I don't know, they kind of went into this on the Netflix documentary. There was this one guy on there who they interviewed who was a German fella, and he started working for Bob Ross Incorporated either right before Bob Ross died or shortly afterward. And at that point, they were trying to expand into more like global markets, right? So they wanted to kind of establish a presence like in Germany. So this guy was like working there, and he said that he went into their warehouse there, and that there were paintings that looked like Bob Ross paintings. Because like I said, he taught people to paint that way. So you could paint something that looked like a Bob Ross painting. And then he said, I saw somebody like signing his signature like on some of the paintings. It obviously wasn't Bob Ross because he had died. So he's like, at that point, he got a little disillusioned with the whole thing. So the weird thing too is, and I'm not sure if this is true, allegedly what they said on the Netflix documentary was that Annette Kowalski, who was his business partner, is the only person that's allowed to authenticate a real Bob Ross painting. And there's kind of like, I don't know, it's very sketchy, allegedly, the whole situation. It's just very strange. They're very, very protective. And like I said, that's why I'm being really careful what I'm saying. Because they're really protective of their brand. And they have been known to sue people that, you know, kind of take advantage of the Bob Ross brand in any way possible, or like say bad shit. Like, I know that like they did the Netflix documentary, and apparently that was fine. They asked them, you know, the documentary filmmakers like asked the Kowalskis to participate, but they didn't want to. And honestly, the Netflix documentary is pretty scathing about them. You know, all the people like, you know, Bob Ross's son and like a lot of the people that knew him and like came up with him and stuff. And a lot of them really, really didn't like the Kowalskis, or didn't like what they did to his image like after he died. So we'll get into that as well. But yeah, it's like actually a pretty interesting. So it's a good documentary on Netflix. And like I said, it's interesting to watch that one, which, as I said, is a more negative portrayal. Not of Bob Ross, obviously, because he was a great guy, but of the whole business situation around, you know, the corporation. And then watching the one from 2011, The Happy Painter, which is a much more bright, which the Kowalskis did participate in because they're both interviewed on there. And I watched that earlier today. And, you know, so that one is a lot more sunny and positive because they were involved, and they apparently don't allow anyone to like say anything bad about it ever, because they don't want any like besmirching of the brand, like I said. So there's that. Let me see. Oh wait,
Straw Dogs was asking me something about Tabasco sauce. He said that wanted to know if I put Tabasco sauce in my eyes to stay awake during Ranger School. I think you misunderstood me. I never got to Ranger School. I was in the first 327 recon, which was a recon platoon. I was in there for shit, man, 8-9 months. I think it was around that time. And then they sent me and 5 other guys to a division level, like a pre-RIP type school, which is a big testing. If you made it through that little fucking thing, it was like 10 days long. If you made it through that, it was kind of like EIB course, really, if you know what EIB course is. A bunch of these little tasks. If you made it through that, they would send you to Ranger School. Me and those other like 4 or 5 guys that they sent, we all fucking boloed from that little fucking test. And it was mostly a combination of things like swim test, errors and call for fire and encode decode, that kind of stupid shit. It was like EIB. We went back to the platoon after that, after all that shit went down. They kind of held that against us. And with probably about 6 months later, they sent all of us out of the damn platoon and sent us to the line, to regular line companies. But by the time that happened, we didn't really care, because we only had like fucking 6, 7, 8 months left on our enlistment. So we didn't care. They were just, you gotta understand, the military's, it's like a beauty contest between pretty girls, and everybody in that motherfucker's pretty. So it's a bunch of mean girls, and you got to be on the top of your game 24/7 if you're going to be in those badass units. And me and the other guys were, I guess we were, our fucking fresh date was going out of date, and they were going to replace us with new ones that they thought might make it through Ranger School, because they had it in their mind that everybody in that goddamn platoon was going to have a Ranger tab. And it was just because of the damn new platoon leader and the platoon sergeant that was in there trying to make a name for themselves, which I didn't really want to go to Ranger School anyway, man, because I knew exactly what that entailed. It's like asking, yeah, send me to a concentration camp. Because every time those guys came back from fucking Ranger School, they were skinny and emaciated and fucking, I knew exactly what that course was about. It was fucking hell. Hell on earth back in the 90s. Terrible. Terrible. Ultimate nut check, and you didn't learn anything. It was just a nut check to see if you could fucking do it, and most dudes couldn't. The attrition rate was fucking terrible. You couldn't make it. So I was already kind of demoralized. I knew that I couldn't make it through 90s Ranger School. I see what they're doing now. I'd sail right through that shit. Still hard, but keep me on steroids, I'd get right through fucking Ranger School. Modern Ranger School. Old Ranger School, no. Not enough food, not enough sleep.
Flash of Fred says, speaking of PBS, there was a show I used to watch called Ghostwriter. I remember that involved these youngsters who helped solve crimes with the help of this magical being. Yeah, I remember that show. I don't remember like a great deal about it, but yeah, I remember watching some of those as well. So yeah, a couple other people remember that. Thank you, Zach. If you keep up with shows on artists, I bet a show on Thomas Kincaid would be a hell of a ride. I bet it would too. I'm kind of curious about that dude because it's not every artist, and even fucking Bob Ross doesn't have mall stores that are completely devoted to his artwork.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a story there. And I never really thought about it until you said something, but now I'm like, yeah, now I'm kind of intrigued. Like, how does that happen? You know what I mean? Holy shit. Harold M. I wanted to be a painter, but they gave me the brush off. Oh, God, the dad jokes. Oh, but I'm dumb. Yeah, another PBS famous show is Masterpiece Theater. That had the host sitting in his lounge chair telling stories. Yeah, I remember that one. And you remember, like, PBS Mystery that had, like, the Edward Gorey animation at the beginning? I remember that one, too. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. Do you guys remember, I don't know how widespread this was, because I know that, like, some PBS stations, you know, some of the shit was national, but some of it was regional. So, there used to be a show, and I think it was called The Bookbird, or there was one called Cover to Cover, but it was the same guy that hosted it, and his name was John Robbins. And what he would do was that he would pick, like, a book every show, and it was usually, like, a YA novel. Like, it's usually, like, a Newbery Medal winner, like, you know, The Westing Game, or The Headless Cupid, or something like that. And he would, like, they would read excerpts from it, and he would, like, draw scenes from it. Like, usually with... It wasn't charcoal, but it was like colored pencil or chalk or something like that. And man, I used to think that was like really mesmerizing too. And it pisses me off because I feel like I tell people about it and I don't think anybody remembered it but me. But I actually like found a really lot of my favorite childhood books from watching that show. And I looked on YouTube, and there's a couple episodes on there. I think there's like 3 or 4 episodes on there, but that's it. And I remember seeing a bunch more than that, because I can remember like a lot of the books that he covered because I remember his drawings. But I kind of feel, I don't know, maybe that was more regional. I mean, the Bob Ross show, that was like everywhere. Like I said, it started out regional, I think, in the Midwest, but then like it went national, and then it started going international because it just really started taking off. So but I know that some PBS shows were more regional because they had PBS, they each had their own thing, so it's like they would decide, the regions, they would decide like what shows they wanted and shit like that. So, you know, I'm not entirely sure how it works because I don't work in TV, but you know. Let's see. Okay, Murder Hornet says, me and Tom were in the Army around the same time. We might have crossed paths at some point. He was at Fort Campbell. I was in Nashville.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, there you go. Maybe so.
It's hard to say.
So let me do a couple of these shout-outs,
okay,
which we haven't had any of these for a while. But I got a really nice message the other day from a woman named, she said, please call her KTY. And she sent me a PayPal donation.
Oh, great.
And she said, hi, Jenny. Hi, Tom. I love you guys. We love you, too. I first found out about you when Jenny was on Where Did the Road Go?
Oh, back then, yeah.
Okay. I've been on there a few times.
That's a great show. We
Yeah,
haven't been on in a long
actually.
time.
Yeah, we haven't. We used to go on there all the time.
Soraya, yeah.
And I've been listening to you guys ever since. I even listened to the previous episodes. It's so fun to watch your show because Jenny reminds me of how I think sometimes. Yeah. That's pretty scary. And Tom makes me laugh all the time. I love the vibrato he puts in his preacher voice. Oh, you haven't done that in a while, the preacher voice in a while.
Oh, I haven't done a preacher in a while, yeah.
Yeah, you haven't. But I remember how you did that. So
I'm the clown of the show. I'm the comedic relief.
Yeah.
But it's not a joke, man. It's fucking real. It is real. It's just my version of it. Go ahead.
He has like the clown version of life.
It's real, though.
The jester version.
It's real. Fucking the dudes know what I'm talking about. From a woman's point of view, a man's always going to look like a joke. You know what I mean? But fucking no, man. We're in a different world. That's not the case. We're in a different world. We know.
That's not the case.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, a lot of the stuff, it's not so much that stuff that y'all do is funny. It's like stuff that y'all do is just like, Not all of it, but just some of that. So she says, I'm donating to you through PayPal because I can't become a patron at this time. I'm getting settled into my new job. Yeah, that's fair enough. Thank you very much. I teach a mythology course.
Oh,
I'm
man.
also getting... That's cool.
Yeah, I'm a mythicist.
I mean, I love all that kind of shit. As you probably know if you watch the show. I'm also getting my certificate in social studies, and in order to get it, this is really cool, I had to write a paper. I called it Red Witchcraft, Institutional Persecution of the Religious and Ideological Nonconformism.
Yeah.
It covers the Salem Witch Trials, Sacco and Vanzetti trial, Alger Hiss trial, and the McMartin preschool trial, which we talked about on our Satanic Panic show. In order to get some of the information for the last section, part of my research was listening to you guys, so the short of it is that you have been referenced in a university paper. Oh my God,
yeah,
I
cool.
feel like so flattered. Hopefully I didn't fuck anything up on that show. I might have been kind of wasted.
I love mythology. I consider myself to be a Christian mythicist. I'll fucking listen to like Myth Vision podcasts. We've had Dr. Price on the show. I'm a cultural Christian, but a mythicist. I don't believe any of that stuff happened. I believe it's mythology. I see things kind of like the Joseph Campbell way of seeing things. I've kind of graduated into more of blending East and West together, and I think what I may be is part of a dead religion known as the Manichaeans. The Manichaeans were East and West combined, and kind of like the prototype that Campbell and Lucas used to come up with the idea of the Jedi. The Jedi and the Sith, that's Manichaeanism. So I'm going to recommend go check out the Manichaeans. And Myth Vision podcast did a couple shows on Manichaeanism, and I think you might like that. That's just my recommendation.
And then she says, I hope this doesn't sound terrible or that I've insulted you in any way, but if you would like to read it, I can send you a copy. I would actually love to read it. So please send me that. I would really like to read it. Please let me know what decision you make. Yes, please send me a copy. I really want to read it. I hope the rest of your week goes well. I'm actually presenting the paper on Friday, so wish me luck. Good luck with that. I'm sure it's awesome. Love you guys. You always make me smile. Sincerely, KTY. Oh, thank you so much. That is like so sweet. That is so fucking awesome. Lars Ulrich said, it's a bit like the situation with Warhol. Yeah. Some people have been authorized to make a wooden box or something, and then it's genuine. Yeah, I kind of feel like it's the same, which is kind of sad. I mean, I don't know if Bob Ross... I don't know. Like I said, we'll get into this later, because they talked about this in the Netflix documentary. I don't know if Bob Ross necessarily would have minded the sort of... I don't know, the sort of, what would you call it, the factorization, the automation or whatever, like, of paintings being, like, kicked out that were, like, not painted by him, that were sort of sold. I don't know, but they're not selling the paintings, necessarily. They are selling, like, a shit ton of other stuff, but I don't know if he'd be mad. He seemed like he, you know, toward the end when he was dying, he really didn't like the idea of, like, selling his, like, signing away his name to them, because he had, like, his own ideas, but it didn't work out apparently the way he wanted. But I don't know. He wasn't really hung up about, oh, this is, like, the finest piece of art and I have to sell it for all this money and shit like that. He wasn't really concerned about that. So I don't know. I'm not entirely sure, like, how he would react to what happened. Maybe he would just be happy that his image is proliferated, but I don't know. We'll get into that. I didn't know the guy, so I'm not really saying. John Smith said, in the UK, we had Jackanory, a kids show, in which a celebrity would read a book over the course of a week. See, that sounds cool. I would have watched that. Tom Baker reading The Iron Man was amazing, as was Rick Mayall. Rick Mayall! Oh my God, I love him. He died, didn't he? He passed away a few years ago.
Tom Baker does Iron Man?
Well, not, yeah.
Or he reads the book Iron Man?
Yeah.
So, man, that sounds good.
That's what I mean. Well, see, we could probably look on YouTube, because I don't think I've heard of it, but I don't think I've ever seen that.
Huge fan of Tom Baker. Had a man crush on Tom Baker since I was a little boy, watching him as fucking Doctor Who back in the 70s. I talked about it earlier in the show. I'm thinking about him to get BritBox just so I can watch all the old Doctor Who episodes. I haven't seen every one of them that had Tom Baker in it.
Well, if you get it, let me poke through there and see if there's some good shit I want to watch.
It's only $6.99 a month.
Oh well, shit.
Should I get it?
That's only $1 more than Shudder.
Oh yeah, Okay, I'll get it.
I mean,
all the
Shudder.
British stuff.
I mean, Shudder. I pay for that like once a year, so that's like super cheap. It's like $59 for a year. That's what I pay for. It's probably cheaper if you pay for it like a year at once.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. Most of them are.
We'll look at it. I don't know if I'll keep it a year, but it seems to be easy to cancel.
But I've seen commercials for it, and it looks like it has good shit on there.
It has every one of the classic Doctor Who's going back to the 60s, all throughout the 80s. And I think some of that stuff from the 80s I'd probably like to see also.
That'd probably be worth getting.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm really, really into like a lot of the British stuff from the 80s.
And they probably have all that comedy on there, like Young Ones and fucking The Goodies and fucking Benny Hill and shit. That motherfucker was hilarious.
I used to watch Benny Hill when I was a kid. It's not funny anymore, but it used to be.
When you were a kid, it was funny.
Young Ones is totally still funny, though.
I was young and fucking watching Benny Hill, and they're busting out the women. I was going, oh man, I wish I was old enough to get that.
Well, yeah, that was kind of like, well, you know, the Brits.
The Brits understood.
Well, they love boobs.
Boobs and ass.
It's a very boob-centric culture. Yeah. Or particularly, it was back then. I don't know about nowadays. But
it's probably cleaned it up now. They're like, oh no, we can't have that.
I don't know. Do you guys still have page 3 girls? Is that still a thing? I know nobody buys like print newspapers anymore, but if they did, I mean, I was of the opinion. I haven't been to the UK since 2009, so I don't. And they still had page 3 girls then, so I don't know.
Evidently, even back in the late 80s, they were cracking down on Benny Hill and accusing him of being some kind of sexist pig. And evidently, no, he wasn't. He lived by himself, a very meager income. Really, he didn't make. He would be considered basically poor by American standards. They weren't paying that bitch. They showed his apartment. He was living in that, his little house, and he's on television. Because an American television performer is a fucking millionaire.
Well, depends. Because when you're talking about Bob Ross, he didn't get paid for that TV show. He did that for free.
Yeah, but that was state television.
Yeah, that was PBS. His money came from teaching classes in person and selling like branded paints and kits and shit like that. That's where all his money came from.
Had Benny Hill been American and that show was happening in the United States, he'd have been living in Beverly Hills. But anyway, they say he was like the sweetest guy ever. He wasn't some misogynist or sexist pig.
He just knew what sold.
He knew what sold, and he just thought it was good-hearted, funny stuff. I think it was. Put the strippers on there. You know what I mean? Let them fucking do their thing.
Let them jiggle.
Let them make their fucking money.
Stardog78 said, I remember when Bob Ross started doing those MTV ads in the early 90s. Yeah, I remember that too. Yeah, MTV. It's all a bunch of happy little trees, or it's all just fluffy white clouds, or something like that. Yeah, thinking that dude's still alive. He was an icon even back then. And I kind of feel like that really helped because, I mean, that was the 90s. That was when, because he died in 1995. But so that was like a year or two. When did he do those ads? Like maybe a couple years before that. And I kind of feel like that slotted right in, because that's like right around when I was like 20, 21 years old. And that slotted right in with the whole Gen X, like we're being ironic thing. So we're like getting all into like the ironic. It's, people, these kids nowadays, they think they invented like retro, like all this retro vintage irony and all that other stuff. No, we were doing that like way back then. And yeah, that's why they had Bob Ross doing the shit. But
John Smith said page 3 ended some years ago.
Oh, okay.
Benny Hill was taken off air and died alone shortly after. He seemed to earn money, but really didn't care how much he lived. And then somebody said, Airhill said that Hill died in his bathrobe watching television. They said he was a very friendly, simple kind of guy who was amazed that he was being attacked over that show. That he was amazed by it and kind of had his feelings hurt because he didn't take any of that seriously. He was just putting on a show and trying to entertain people. Which I feel you. I feel you, Benny. I feel you. I didn't take it seriously. It wasn't anything fucking against fucking civilization or anything. He was just putting on a fucking show. It was hilarious. Slapping that little guy on the top of his head and shit. It's just funny,
I haven't seen it in a long time.
It was just funny.
Gramther's Hammer, who would you rather party with, Benny Hill or Benny Hinn? That's a pretty easy question to answer. Nobody wants to party with Benny Hinn. Yeah. Any minute he might come along and be like, you're healed, and like smack you in the head and knock you over.
I have the idea that Benny Hill wasn't amazingly funny if you were hanging out with him. He was just making a show.
Well, a lot of comedians are kind of like depressed people.
Yeah,
which, you know, I don't want to generalize too much, but a lot of them are. The reason they become comedians is because it's a defense mechanism. Like, they're kind of trying to cover up, because they want to make other people happy. They want to make other people laugh.
He was just a middle-aged guy who probably couldn't get laid and was just amazed by women and humor and comedy. He kind of represented just the average guy sitting at home, you know.
Which I think was a large part of probably why that show worked.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. You looked at the guy, he didn't even look like anybody famous, you know.
Although you can kind of say that about a lot of British TV stars.
I guess so, yeah.
Well, they're not, I mean, the British, probably it's less so nowadays, I kind of feel like. But back in the old days, they used to think it was very funny that, like, everybody on American TV or in American movies had to look completely perfect.
Yeah, you had to be beautiful.
Like, nobody, like, whereas they were more open to just having people that looked like regular people, like, in their movies and TV shows.
That didn't come to the United States till the 90s.
Yeah, that was, like, later. Like, yeah, in ours, everybody had to be, even if you were just, like, a fucking hooker. Even if you were a hooker, you had to look like fucking Julia Roberts.
10.
Right.
If your job was to play a
like
fucking
real
ugly ass witch, you were a 10, and then they made you ugly.
Yeah, they couldn't even put like an actual ugly person, or even like a plain person in a role. It's like we have to have this hot person,
and we'll
we'll put glasses on her.
Yeah, glasses. Then now she's
and
ugly.
Pull all her hair back into a ponytail.
Yeah.
Boom, ugly. And we'll put her in a baggy sweatshirt.
Right. No, actor or actress was synonymous with beautiful. Hollywood was synonymous for beautiful in American culture. Just that's the way it was, going all the way back to the 20s.
DJ Maniac says, comedian here, can confirm. Yeah, it's like, I'm sure not all of them are like that, but a lot of the best comedians are, if you met them in person, are actually like wrestling with depression and like other issues. The reason they become comedians is, like I said, it's a defense mechanism. They're trying to like make other people laugh, make other people happy. It's a way to get accepted.
Freshen your drink up.
Yeah.
So we should maybe get into this, huh?
Yeah. Oh, one more thing I wanted to mention. Tammy sent me a message about this, and I was going to mention it on one of the movie reviews because... What?
Oh, wait. Do you need me to hear this?
No.
Okay.
Because I heard about it like right before we did one of the movie reviews, but you guys know I'm a big fan of Nick Cave, and his son, Jethro, died. Now, if you guys didn't know, just a few years ago, his son, Arthur, also died. Arthur died when he was 15. He was actually like on LSD in Brighton, in England, where they lived, and he accidentally fell off a cliff and died. His twin brother Earl is still alive. But Jethro, he went by Jethro Cave, but his actual birth name was Jethro Lazenby, I think. He was actually 31, I believe. And he had been working like as a model, and he was an actor and stuff like that. They're not saying how he died. He had been diagnosed with schizophrenia, and a few years ago he had kind of gotten in trouble for domestic abuse, like spousal abuse, or he's like beating up on his girlfriend, and I think he'd also like beat up on his mom a few times too. So he was having some issues. But Nick actually did confirm that that his son died like a little while ago, but I don't know what the cause of death was. So yeah, that's like pretty shitty, especially just because his teenage son died not too long ago in a horrible accident. So yeah, I just thought I would mention that because I'm a big fan of his. Yeah, the Aristocrat sketch, yeah. They have Nick Cage dolls, probably. Somebody makes one. Let's see. They're talking about, yeah, Ali G. Yeah, that's right. I haven't seen too much of it, but if you need to see the difference between UK and US comedy, check out the US pilot of Red Dwarf. Oh, I should. Yeah. I like some American comedy, but I'm not a real big fan of comedy films, like in general, or comedy TV shows. Like there's some American comedies I like I really liked, I'm trying to think, I don't really watch a lot of funny like movies or shows or anything, but one that I remember really liking that was American was Arrested Development. I thought that shit was fucking hysterical. Somebody used to tape it for me, like back in the old days, or somebody used to like burn it to DVD and I used to watch it. So yeah, so I thought that was like super funny. But growing up, I don't know, I always just British humor was like funnier to me. I don't know why. I can't really put my finger on it exactly. A lot of American comedy I feel like is trying too hard. Maybe that's what it is. And I think the reason that I thought Arrested Development was so funny was because it was more like situationally funny and like a little bit absurdist, and it was a lot drier, where I kind of felt like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of American comedy is just kind of like screaming in your face like, it's funny, and I just can't, like, that's a generalization, it's not all like that, but I don't know, I feel like a lot of it is like that, like it's trying too hard, and I don't like try hard kind of stuff. Just be funny or don't, you know what I'm saying? Just like, if you have to try, then just knock it off. So there is a Nicolas Cage doll that's based on his character from Mandy. It's more of an action figure, though. Oh my god, I think I might need to get my hands on that. Is it anatomically correct? Well, that's the big question, isn't it? John Smith. In the U.S., Red Dwarf, they made the black character white. Huh. Yeah, that figures. Well, you know. That's gonna happen. All right. Okay, so how long has it been? Okay, so we're an hour in. So we have been talking about Bob Ross off and on, but I kind of want to get into the show because this is one of those topics that I thought this would be an interesting show, because when I first watched the Netflix documentary, I'm like, because I had watched Bob Ross when I was a kid. I used to watch it on public television. He was like fascinating, but I never really gave much thought to what was going on behind the scenes. And he wasn't the only painting show that I watched. I watched Bill Alexander. I used to watch the Jenkins. They did the flowers and shit. There was like other painters on there that I watched. I watched the cooking shows, like you said. You know, I watched the book guy. So I watched a lot of that growing up. But I never really thought about it like more than that. But when I was like scrolling through Netflix like last year, and that Netflix documentary, you know, the Bob Ross like Betrayal and Greed one, and I was just kind of like, man, I wonder if that's really interesting. So I started watching it. I'm like, wow, that was like actually a really interesting documentary. But I didn't think about doing a show about it until a couple of people like recommended it, and I was like, yeah, that would make a pretty cool show, because I don't know, it's one of those things that you maybe don't initially think would be interesting, but like then the more you look into it, like the more interesting it gets. Maybe that's true of everything. I'm not entirely sure.
Harold's asking about fucking Nick Cage dolls. You're talking about Nick Cage dolls?
Well, no, I was talking about Nick Cave, and then somebody brought up like Nicolas Cage, and then he said there was one. Well, there's an action figure based on his Mandy character.
Oh, okay.
So
there is the Mandy character.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Is he all bloody? Like, did he have a chainsaw? And is he all bloody?
Yeah.
You know what?
I want one of those.
They should have him like where he was, that scene where he's like in the bathroom where he's just like in that shirt and his tighty whities.
Yeah.
And he's just like, and he's like screaming.
Gotta see that movie again. I have that, don't I?
I'm pretty sure you do.
I gotta check.
I bought him like for Christmas or his birthday or something like that a couple years ago. I bought him a really nice like silk poster from that of Mandy.
I gotta see if I have that movie.
I thought we had it. Well, I know we have Color Out of Space.
Yeah.
But
it's pretty good. Some people didn't like it, but I liked it.
I didn't like it as much as Mandy.
No, Mandy was better.
But it was still pretty good. It's still one of the best Lovecraft movies. And it's hard to get a Lovecraft movie right.
And the one where he's in there fighting the fucking animatronic robots, Chuck E. Cheese.
Willy's Wonderland.
Willy's Wonderland's good too. I'm gonna get that one. Nick Cage. Excuse me, Nick. That's not his name. What's his name?
Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas Cage. He either makes a fucking fantastic movie or it's just a piece of shit. There's really nothing really in between.
Well, isn't he in a movie that's at the theater right now called like The Unbearable... What is it called? The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent or something like that?
Shit, maybe
isn't he in that? Oh, the Firestarter remake starts this week.
Okay, we gotta see that too.
And then that movie Men starts next week.
Okay.
I looked up when the new David Cronenberg was coming out, but I don't know. Because it said June 2022, but that's when it's premiering at the Cannes Film Festival, which obviously I can't fly to France.
Me and Jenny have the fucking Stubbs plan on fucking AMC.
AMC Stubbs, yeah.
So we get to see 3 movies a week for free.
Yeah.
For $20 a month.
It's like 20-something bucks a month.
And we don't even use them all.
Well, and
We need to
especially
start coming back.
we've been using it less lately because it's farther.
It's farther.
Because we moved farther away. We moved farther away, and yet that movie theater is still the closest one, like the one by our old house.
Yeah.
So now it's like a whole day ordeal. Like the last one we went and saw the Northman.
Yeah.
But before that, what was the last one we went and saw before that? I don't even remember.
Y'all need to see the Northman.
Yeah.
That's as good as Conan 1. I mean, it's up there, man. Fuck, I love that movie. I got to see it again. I want to buy it.
Jason says, I live in Australia and we get MASH reruns every year. Best satire comedy. Yeah, MASH was actually pretty fucking funny. John Smith just looked up Benny Hill's estimated net worth by the time of his death was in today's money around 13 million pounds.
Damn, that's fucking $26 million. His shit he was living like he was broke.
Maybe he was just one of those people.
He was one of those guys that just lived frugal, I guess. Not really frugal. He lived regular.
Yeah, some people don't really, even if they have a lot of money, because I kind of feel like Bob Ross was that type of dude.
Yeah.
He was just like a humble kind of dude.
Yeah.
Like, even though, like, he probably had money, like, they had okay money, he just never really felt in it. Now, he did have, like, a sweet Corvette, though, because they said he really liked to, like, drive real fast and, like, take people for rides and go, check this out. Like, he used to like to do that. But from what I could determine, like, he didn't have no fucking mansion or nothing like that. You know, he just kind of lived right.
If you have $26 million in the United States, fucking you live in a gigantic mansion. There's lots of those. They got used ones that they can't even sell.
Well, see, I don't know if I would do that, though, because I mean, as much as I would like to live, like, in a creepy haunted castle, that would be awesome. I don't want, like, a big fucking giant one, because I don't want to clean it, one, and two, I feel bad having to hire other people to clean it.
I've looked into it because, you know...
It just seems like an expense I don't need.
I've looked into it because of the fucking urban exploration, the Urbex videos on YouTube. I've looked into the mansion scene. And they say people that live in them end up living in only like a small apartment inside the mansion.
Well, yeah, of course.
The rest of the time, they don't even go in there.
Because why would you?
Yeah.
I mean, in your day-to-day life, you really only need a couple of rooms.
Yeah.
Your sleeping room, your TV watching room.
And evidently the people that buy them for the first time, after a few years, don't like them. They say it's kind of like living at a hotel. And to run one properly, you need an entire staff. So it's like a business.
That's what I'm saying. It's just, it's a headache.
Yeah.
Why would you want
what
that?
they end up doing a lot of times is having an area cleaned up and then just shut off. That they don't even go there. And if they have a party or something, they'll turn power on and air conditioning on to that side of the wing and they'll revive it for an event. But in their normal everyday life, they're evidently not practical at all. Even, I'm calling it a mansion. It's really almost kind of like a McMansion, most of them. We have them around here. They're huge houses. But usually it's a family of two. They don't even have children, the guys that own them. It's a dude and his girlfriend. A lot of times he's not even married to them. He's some guy that struck it rich in some kind of a fucking business. And he's a middle-aged, overweight dude who's bald. And he's got this fucking gigantic house. And it's not really doing anything for him in terms of his dateability or anything. You know what I mean? It's just, he's a random dude in this thing. It's another, I mean, we live in a big house, but it's not a mansion.
And the thing about it is that
we're in a big house and we don't use all of it.
That's what I mean. Even in this house, I really don't have a clue like what to do with some of the space.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't need that, though.
One room is just my fucking gym. And I got to get in there and paint it and fucking paint the walls.
It doesn't have curtains or nothing.
Doesn't even have curtains.
It has blinds on it, but it doesn't have
and there's really just that fucking gym in there.
That's all that's in there.
It doesn't look good. I want fucking
it's just empty.
art and...
This is really the only room that's just super decorated.
Yeah.
Because I knew that this was going to be on camera, so I came in here first thing and painted it and put shit up and
this house
like
is a studio. This room is a studio, basically.
Right. But it's like we had that big long living room shit over there. It's like there's nothing in there.
There's two living rooms basically, and fucking there's nothing really.
The upstairs one, it's like the fridge is. We have a fridge and an ice maker in there. We have like a couple chairs and the cat tree, and that's about it. But the rest of it's just blank.
And an American McMansion is 4 of these. So, yeah,
That's what I mean. I can't imagine that I would ever need to live anything bigger than this because, like I said, I can't even
max this out.
I can't even think of like what to do with most of the space in this place.
We don't get enough super chats to fucking furnish this place. It'll come, but
although, like I said, I don't
really want to furnish it because I don't like the color. I gotta fucking paint it first. So
well, that's what I mean. I came in here before we moved in and painted this shit before I moved all the furniture in because I said I don't want to have to move furniture because I fucking hate doing it.
Right.
So I came in and painted this and I painted the bathroom and then I got furniture and like moved it in here. But the thing about it is that, I mean, honestly, I spend how many hours a day in this room?
Almost most of the day.
Pretty much all day. Like I come in here at 7:30, 8 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I'm in here until like 7, 8 at night.
Well, there's nowhere else really to go in here yet.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like I have a little couch over there, like if I could lay on.
This living room, I want to put a bar in it. I want to fucking hook up another sink on the other side of her bathroom here. And on that side, it'd be like a sink that you could fill up ice makers with and make drinks with. And I want to fucking put a bar around there. And I want video games in there and lights and...
Yeah, eventually like we could do like a game room,
like a game room club type thing.
We just, you know,
we don't have friends over. You know,
Granther's Hammer said, "In your basement, you should build a smush room." Basement.
There's
this
no
is
basement.
Florida.
This is Florida. There's no basement.
We don't have basements in Florida because it'd be below the water table and it would just be flooded all the time. Mm-hmm. I think some houses do have basements, but I grew up in a house that sort of had a basement, but it was like kind of above. Like the house was actually raised off the ground. Yeah. So the basement was like half.
He's in Michigan.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Florida, we don't have basements.
No such thing.
No, we don't have basements. Generally, because you can't. Like I said, you dig down like a few feet and it's just whoosh. Yeah. It's like ocean water. We're right at the water. We're right at water level, so at sea level.
Bears and fucking alligators, whole fucking dinosaurs up in here, man.
Dinosaurs.
Alligator's a dinosaur. Look, I gotta stay look, we're having a good show, but we gotta stay fucking focused on the.
What do you mean we?
You know what I'm talking about.
You gotta stay focused.
Yeah.
That's not gonna happen.
Right.
I gave up on that a long time ago. All right, so let's talk about Bob Ross. Like I said, we were talking about Bob Ross a little bit, like off and on.
How long have we been on the show?
An hour and 12 minutes.
Yeah, it's time to go on. That's the first hour was introduction, basically.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. So, interesting. See, I didn't even know this until I looked this shit up. This is a small world. Bob Ross, who was actually born Robert Norman Ross, so that is his real name, Bob Ross, was born in motherfucking Daytona Beach, Florida. That's where I was born. So I thought that was kind of cool. I'm like, hey, Daytona, bro. Obviously, he was born, like, much earlier than I was. He was born, like, in the 1940s. But yeah, so as I said, I kind of feel like everybody in the world probably knows who Bob Ross is. That his fucking show, The Joy of Painting, was on for 10 years, more than 10 years. It was like 31 seasons, but I think that there was a season every quarter. So yeah, so it was a while. 1983 to 1994 it was on. And it eventually went all over Europe and Asia and everything like that. So yeah, he's born in Daytona Beach, Florida, which I was like, that's fucking crazy. Because obviously a lot of people are born in Daytona Beach, Florida, including me, but you don't really hear about famous people that were born in Daytona Beach, Florida. I can't really think. I can think of other famous people that were born in Florida, but I mean, well, can I? Tom Petty? I think he was born in Gainesville, which is central Florida, which is kind of central Florida. Daytona is like on the coast, but I'm sure there's some, but I can't really think of any right now. Do women find his big ginger afro sexy? Probably not, but there's kind of a funny story about that afro, like why he first did it and then like why he kept it for so long.
That afro was fucking retro, even in the 80s. That shit was.
That was
a 70s thing, man. And I remember them out in California when I was a kid. Dudes that had those afros, white dudes with afros. It was a Bee Gees type fucking thing. It was just, it was kind of disco and soft rock, weed, and California girls that were kind of dressed like fucking Indian girls with the fucking. You ever see the fucking with the? You had to be there at the time to understand what I'm talking about.
You know, it's hilarious. Speaking of the Bee Gees, when we were in FYE the other day, where I bought this cool ass Creep Show shirt, they were playing a Bee Gees CD in there. So
Love
the
Bee
kids
Gees.
did it. Yeah. So the kids,
Love
I
Bee
was
Gees.
just kind of like, hey, I like your Bee Gees action here. This is
Dudes
like,
could sing, man.
It's like real nice disco energy you have going in here.
They
And
could sing.
So I'm in there like looking around at all the shirts, like fucking doing that. Like
Just listen to Night Fever if you don't believe me. Fucking Night Fever. Fucking yeah. I got DJs in here. Fucking DJ Maniac. He will attest. Fucking the DGs had game and they could fucking
the
bring
DGs.
it. I said, what did I say?
You said the DGs.
The DGs. They said the Bee Gees. The Bee Gees had game, man. They could fucking bring it.
That's the porn cover version band.
Yeah.
The DGs. D for dick.
She's fucking with me.
That's my job.
Yeah.
Mrs. Evans' Arty Party says, I live in a 5,400 square foot Victorian that my hubby and I renovated. We can't afford to heat and cool all of it.
Yeah.
It isn't practical, but we love it and our kids do too. Yeah, I think that's...
She said what kills us is all the maintenance.
Yeah.
And we do all the work. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So... As much as cool as it would be, like I said, to live out my fantasy of like living in like an old creepy like Hammer horror house, but I could do one like that, but like on a smaller scale. Because like I said, one, I don't want to clean it, and I don't want to have to pay somebody else to clean it.
When I was
and
living in
fix shit.
Mississippi, working in the fucking central heating and air fucking industry, my boss,
I'm gonna run to the bathroom.
my boss, who is my dad's best friend, they grew up together. He called those Victorians money eaters. And man, they would spend all kind of money to get fucking central fucking heating and air and those things. Because Mississippi's filled with those big old Victorians. They're fucking beautiful. 2- and 3-story house, 3-story ones too. They're not very big, but they're kind of tall. They look like something out of the Haunted Mansion. But they were never designed for air conditioning. They just had tall glass door windows type things that you could open up and go around and walk around, balconies that went all the way around each floor. And we would put fucking central systems in them and have to fucking make metal ductwork to have it all insulated. And all the ductwork's now on the outside of the walls because the walls aren't thick enough to hide the ductwork. You know, just they are beautiful, but they just were never designed to be air conditioned. And if you want to air condition that, you better have some fucking money. They were just supposed to fucking have the windows open with screens.
Oh my god, Pookie.
Yeah, what's up, Pookie? Yeah.
I can't brush you right now. It's
Yeah.
the middle of the show.
But the ones all over Mississippi, the ones that are still standing at least, look like something out of damn New Orleans. They're real French looking, you know.
This hair is killing
Yeah.
me. It's like all falling on my face and stuff. So yeah, Miss Evans' Arty Party says our house is super super creepy and I love it. Yeah, see, I want it creepy. That's why I try to make it kind of creepy in here. It's not as creepy as I would like, but it's getting there. It's dark all the time. I never ever open the blinds.
Real high ceilings with electric fans on them. That's the way they were.
Yeah, so I don't know if you were here, but Bob Ross is from my hometown of Daytona Beach, Florida.
Oh, I know
born
he's
in
from Florida.
I didn't know he was from Daytona Beach.
Yeah.
I was like, bitch, I was born there too. That's cool. So his dad was a carpenter. His mom was a waitress. And actually, they moved to Orlando when he was over. So he actually grew up.
So he's a local.
Yeah, so he actually grew up in Orlando. So, woo, somebody cool came from Florida. That's awesome.
There's a lot of cool people from Florida. Don't let Jenny fucking...
So, well, somebody said Granthur's Hammer said Fred Durst of Limp Bizkit's from Florida. I'm like, that's not helping. That's not helping matters.
Fucking Marilyn Manson's from Florida.
That's also not helping. Tom Petty's from Florida, too.
Yeah, a lot of people from Florida.
Tom Petty's kind of cool.
Florida's fucking old. It's older than the United States.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so, like I said, St. Augustine is the oldest continually occupied European settlement.
Yeah.
So, and it's a cool place to go. It's one of my favorite places to go. That's where I went for vacation last year.
It's all vampiric and shit. You know, Lestat was from the South. Okay? This is the kind of place you see Lestat and Louis, but they come from places like this.
Yeah, where everything's
and
covered.
pirates and shit.
Everything's covered with like Spanish moss. And,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing about Florida
Pirates
is that a
and
lot of people, because everybody, you know, if you're not from here, it's just everything's like, oh, beaches and everything. Well,
Yeah.
we do have that, but
That's not what the
beaches
place
and
was.
Disney. But yeah, back in the old days, it was
Yeah.
like creepy swamps and Spanish
Yeah.
moss and pirates and
Yeah.
shit like that.
You're
so there
right,
is
yeah.
cool shit of like
All
about
this shit's
our
been going on.
history.
Yeah. Then the Seminole Empire. They had an Indian empire here, a bunch of badasses. Some of them are still here. Ran into one of them at the damn biker bar. He was up in there and says, "You a Seminole?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm a Seminole, but we stayed, you know, because a lot of them got fucking back in the Seminole Wars. They got sent to fucking Oklahoma or whatever. They didn't want to go because they didn't want to live next to the Crow. They couldn't stand the Crow. But that's tribal history. Their Seminole are still here. They're just Americans now.
There's a big ass
Yeah.
Seminole casino.
Yeah.
In Lakeland,
Yeah.
like on the way. It's between here and Tampa.
When you see one, you know. They tend to be big. The Seminoles were big. Fucking, you're talking about 6-foot Indians. All right, and they're just chilled out and they hang out around here. They tend to be bikers. They're country people. Got farms. Yeah.
Richie Wolf said Jim Morrison was from Florida. Oh yeah, I forgot about
Yeah.
that. Yeah, he is.
A lot of cool people were from Florida.
Harold M says where St. Augustine, meaning like, is that where we're talking about St. Augustine, or
Yeah,
where St.
that's
Augustine
one of the
is?
places.
St. Augustine
Yeah.
is, like I said, the oldest continually occupied
Yeah.
European settlement in the United States. And it's about an hour and 15 minutes from here. I grew up I grew up in Daytona Beach, which is only like 40, 50 miles down the coast from
Yeah.
it. You drive 40, 50 miles up A1A, like right on the ocean, and it's right there.
And the tip of Florida and fucking the Keys and everything, there was pirate shit going on down there for fucking centuries. All right.
Well, Tampa on
They're
the West
fucking
Coast,
great.
they got the whole fucking, they got Gasparilla. That's that
Yeah.
whole like pirate festival. It's like
Yeah.
Mardi Gras, but it's like pirate
Yeah.
based. They do that every year.
Yeah, so Florida isn't like some kind of like generic, hey, we just opened up shop last week. No, it's not like that. It's been here for fucking ever. And it was Spanish Empire and the fucking Seminole Empire and for long before America was ever here. Okay. It's I don't want to say diverse. That's some kind of cheesy fucking buzzword. It's got character here. Got character. Like New Orleans and Louisiana. You know.
In parts, yeah.
A lot of character.
In parts, it's like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Has the same kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Granther says, question, did Bob Ross pull lots of strange with his painting shtick? Granther thinks he was a wolf in sheep's clothing who dropped more panties, talking about happy clouds and burnt sienna. Honestly, he probably did. I don't know. Like I said, they don't know a great deal about his private life. I will get into that a little bit later. But he was married several times, although that sounds like a little more judgmental than it's, because the situation was a little bit different than what you're maybe picturing. But he was allegedly did kind of like cheat on some of his wives. So there's that. And when he started getting famous, he absolutely had fucking groupies. I don't know if he humped any of them, but
well,
I'm just,
man's gonna cash in on his fame.
Well, I mean, the thing about him though is that his appeal seems, he had like a bunch of like old ladies and shit like that, but I saw this footage of, he did like a live painting demonstration in Central Park in New York City, and I don't remember what year it was, and they were like amazed at how many people showed up, and it was like everybody, like it was little kids, it was old ladies, it was like young people, it was like fucking everybody, and they all brought like paintings, so it's like everybody was watching the shit.
I've mentioned it in other shows. My Aunt Lois from Mammoth Mountain Poltergeist worked at Palomar Observatory, okay? And she worked for Dr. Penner. She was Dr. Penner's secretary. Back in those days, when you said a woman was a secretary, that was saying it's something fucking badass, because she was the laptop, basically, the supercomputer of the day. All right, they didn't have laptops. You had secretaries. They kept all that shit ordered. She said biggest babe magnet she ever saw was Carl Sagan. Okay, Carl Sagan was the fucking man. They had Sagan astronomy groupies. Okay. They had women fucking gunning for that. I could see it, but he also was another guy that had the AMSR style voice. All right, and intelligent, talent and intelligence. Women like it. They like it.
And they also like
Character
and somebody that is a genuinely good person.
Yeah.
And like I said, Bob Ross always seemed like a genuinely good dude.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't seem like he wasn't gonna fucking shout at you. He wasn't gonna he wasn't gonna be a dick or nothing like that.
Sagan was gonna sit down with you and we're gonna talk about billions and billions and billions.
That's what I mean. A lot of women are really into that. Yeah. So I kind of feel like maybe it depends on the woman. Like I said, I'm not generalizing because everybody kind of likes something different. But I know there's kind of like a misconception, maybe in the incel community or whatever, that it's like, oh, women only like these kind of like jerks or people that are like alphas or whatever, and that is absolutely not true. A lot of women do not like those types of dudes, so there's that. And it would not surprise me. I don't know if it really happened or not, but it would not surprise me if Bob Ross, I mean, for sure, like, he had a lot of female fans. And honestly, in the Netflix documentary, I think his son was saying that at one point, like at the height of his fame, he would go and do classes or he would go and do, live demonstrations like in malls and shit like that. And so many people would show up and like women would show up and they would be like a rock star. They would like try to like tear his shirt off and shit like that. So he absolutely did have groupies. I mean, despite his hair, which you'd think might be a detriment, but it was the thing about it was that it was just like a part of him. His hair got to be so much a part of him that when I see pictures, because there were pictures of him before he got the perm, because it was a perm, before he got it, when he was younger, like in like military photos and stuff, and I can't recognize him without the hair. I guess because the afro is just so prominent that I never really like looked at his face, like all of that. It was just kind of like he was just like a little ball of hair, like a little dandelion, and I never really like looked at his face all that closely, and I didn't really realize that until I started seeing pictures of him. I said, if you showed me a picture of that and be like, hey, who's that? I would have no idea, because I never like looked at his face enough to like recognize his features without, I mean, his hair was just like so recognizable that was kind of like all you could realize. So it's like when you see pictures of him from before he had that, because back when he was younger, he used to have kind of like a pompadour, which is actually pretty cool. He looked kind of rockabilly. And he had that. I said, if you showed me a picture of that and said that's Bob Ross or asked me who it was, I would have no idea who that was, because I can't recognize him without that fucking afro, Mm-hmm. And they were savvy enough to know that was like his trademark, and it probably would have been the same thing if he had different hair and be like, who the fuck is that guy? You know what I mean? Where's the afro? But yeah, so he grew up in Orlando, Florida. Now, one of the other things, like other than painting, the other thing that he was really, really, really into was animals. He loved animals. He loved wildlife. He was really into, even in his later years, he had kind of like, he would rescue. He had like a wildlife rescue, where he would help out with wildlife rescues. And obviously you grew up in Florida, we have, he called them critters, just like we were talking about that the other day.
Yeah.
And he had little pet animals like all the time. He would rescue little alligators and armadillos and snakes. He had a pet snake for a while and shit like that.
Critter is a Florida beewolf. Okay. Which, if you didn't see the other show about fucking Northmen, you'll understand what a beewolf was. But beewolf meant critter. Critter. Could mean bear, but any kind of predator was a beewolf. A big wolf.
Hugo said, in the new Creepshow series, there's a character based on Bob Ross, which is hilarious. Yeah, that's right. I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, in the last Creepshow series, which is on Shudder, they had an episode that was set at like a public TV station, and they had a character that's based on Bob Ross. Yeah, Jim Morrison was from Melbourne. Yeah, that's Melbourne is like a little bit, how many miles, like maybe 30, 40 miles south of where I grew up. So yeah. Hugo said, I went to art school because of Bob Ross and Ray Harryhausen.
Ray Harryhausen.
So there you go.
With this stop motion stuff, man.
I mean,
the Sinbad series.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, those are like two really good heroes to have, I feel like.
I think you need to bring back stop motion. Fuck all this CGI. Use CG to make stop motion look better. To get the fucking blur in between frames. That's how I would do it.
I was always real into stop motion. It doesn't have to look real.
No, just
I don't
cool.
care if it looks real. It just looks good.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I liked it as a kid because it didn't look real.
Me too.
Looked like a moving toy.
Me too.
I liked it.
I mean, and I even got into, I mean, you know, obviously like Nightmare Before Christmas and all that kind of stuff, but I was always into like Nick Park, where he did like Wallace and Gromit and stuff like that. I mean, that shit looks amazing.
Yeah.
All that stop motion animation is like fantastic. I love all those Wallace and Gromit shorts, and then they did long form movies too, like Chicken Run and Curse of the Were-Rabbit and all that kind of stuff that were all stop motion. It's really like, yeah, it's time consuming, but you're making a piece of art. You know, I'm not shitting on like digital artists, because that's like a thing too, but it's easier. Let's not. Yeah. It's tedious, but it's easier. So I kind of respect anybody that actually like makes the little puppets and like moves them and does, you know.
Well, it was also in Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi. Remember, they were doing a lot of stop motion walkers, stop motion tauntauns and shit. I just thought it looked good.
It did, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, it doesn't look entirely real, but that's okay.
Yeah, no. It's just fantasy movie anyway.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was the same thing with like shit like, you know, Clash of the Titans, which also had like Ray Harryhausen stuff, and it's like, you know, it didn't look real, but you just incorporated into your whole like experience of the movie, so it totally worked. Yeah, it totally worked.
Had it with ED-209, and yeah.
People have imagination. It's okay. It doesn't have to look completely realistic, especially if it's a fantasy movie.
Yep.
DJ Maniac says like Al Jorgensen before the weave. Exactly. If you showed me a picture of Al Jorgensen and he didn't have that hair, I would not recognize him. And it's the same thing with Bob Ross. I see pictures like it's like I know it's Bob Ross obviously because I'm watching a documentary about Bob Ross, but if you just showed me a picture of that dude randomly and said who's this, I wouldn't know who it was because he didn't have the afro yet. So
Grabber's asking me where would Bob Ross land on the manly man scale?
Is there such a thing?
No, yeah, of course there is. Of course there is.
Dudes are ridiculous.
Of fucking course there is. But the thing is that there's always another scale, okay? I've fucking been through some of the fucking most manliest man bullshit American life can offer, all right? Fucking military and government type shit. There's another kind of man, okay? You can't put Mozart on the same scale as, you know what I mean, fucking somebody like Masada Oob or some, or actually he's a writer, so that's not the same. You can't judge them all. You can't judge all men the same way. They got some dudes that just can come out with some artistic shit that's like, oh yeah, hell yeah. So the man credits just go way up. All right. So, now Bob Ross, he had the AMSR factor. All right. He could paint. He could relax you. So he seemed like a genuinely good dude. He was just a nice man. Right.
And we don't really have a lot of those, or we don't have examples of those. I'm sure there's lots of nice people out there.
So he carved out a niche for himself, and making up your own rules and mastering your own game is a macho fucking thing. And that's what he did.
It obviously struck a chord because people are still talking about him decades after he died.
Yeah,
you know,
it's part of the big man bonus points is not to follow, but to innovate and to make your own way. Not every dude is doing that.
To me, the manliest thing is to not give a shit where you fall on the manly man scale. That is the manliest thing.
Well, no.
Or to not give a shit about what other people think about you and just do. That's what I mean. And just do your own shit and don't worry about what other people are going to say about it.
What it is that you cannot it is not super manly to confine yourself to stereotypes of what the manly man scale is. You know what it is when you see it. You know what it is when you see it. You know it when you see it. And sometimes a dude can innovate and just come up with some idiot. You the man. You the fucking man. All right. Now there's different kinds. There's going to be different reactions, and the women are going to react differently. But that's what life is about. It's not stereotypical stuff. Like for instance, okay, look, this. We're going to speak. We're going to speak amongst the same generation. Was Prince a tough dude? No, Prince was not tough. Could Prince bench press what I Prince? No. Was Prince a man? Yeah, Prince was man. And Prince was a fucking man, all right? Prince could do things that I could not do. and fucking make a lot of money and get a lot of fucking appreciation from other men because of his words and his art, and could fucking have entire fucking just armies of females fucking listening to his albums and fucking women. I'm not females, just fucking loving on this dude.
Okay, Ferengi.
So was Prince? No, female is just women have problems with science. Okay, but
no,
fucking,
we don't.
Okay, it's just all these females just fucking loving this dude. And is he a stereotypical manly man? No, not at all. Not at all. Was he manly? Yeah, he was. He was rewriting it. He did it his own way. He did it in a way that worked. So, no, fucking Prince was the shit, man. Yeah, he was great. Would I do that? No. But that was him. You know. Have I done stuff kind of like that within the goth world? Yeah. But you see, he was working within his own framework of talent. He was applying himself the best way he could. And yeah, he got a lot of success for it. He died from some drug addiction on prescription drugs, but a lot of those guys did. You know, that's how Elvis went. It was sad. It was sad because there was still a lot more in him. There was more music in him. Just that we didn't get it. Well, whatever.
Mr. 88 says, what is sad is there are not enough nice men. Yeah, I agree. When they are, many jump to, they must be buggerers. Yeah. It's very difficult to find the zone. Society is very cynical. Yeah, and the thing is, you can't, like, blame people for thinking that, because a lot of times it's like, oh, I met this person and they were, like, seemed really nice, but then it turned out that they were, you know, a serial killer, or just, you know, maybe not that extreme, obviously, but they turned out to be, like, an asshole, or they sucked in some way. So I understand that, and like I said, I kind of feel like that's why people like Bob Ross or Mr. Rogers or something like that, like, still resonate to this day, is because those dudes were, like, genuinely nice dudes, and nothing bad ever came out about them. Like, I know that some people maybe try to say, oh, maybe they're a child molester, but it really never seemed to stick, you know what I mean? Because everybody knew them and are like, no, they were just, like, a genuinely nice person. And I kind of feel like it's sad that most people, and I don't know if this is actually true or not, but most people feel like, oh, I never meet anybody that's just, like, a genuinely nice person, or, you know, everybody's got, like, some fucking dark secret, or they seem like a nice person and then you find out, like, some really shitty stuff that they did or said, or, like, something like that, like, back in the day. It's like, why can't anybody just be a genuinely nice person? But I do kind of feel like that's why Bob Ross still, you know, this many years after his death, like, why people are still talking about it. And the same thing with Mr. Rogers, because they just seemed like genuinely nice-ass people, which, as I said, it really does seem rare. I'm sure it's not, but it just seems that way, just because so many of us, me included, have had, you know, experiences where you meet somebody that seems like a genuinely nice person, and then, like, later on you find out they're shitty in some way or another, and after a while that starts to wear on you. Yeah. And you got to get to a point where, well, every nice person well, they must be hiding something, that nobody could be this nice of a person. No. So yeah, you do get kind of cynical, but there are people out there that are that nice. It's just that, you know, people have been burned so many times that you don't.
But you also have to back up and realize that when you're talking about Bob Ross and you're talking about fucking Mr. Rogers, there was a medium involved, which was television. Okay. That if television wasn't involved, those two guys, you'd never even know their names. They just came across that media the right way to bring a bunch of fans.
Yeah.
Were they good dudes? Yeah, they're good dudes, and they knew how to capitalize on what they had. Now, Blairdo's going on about, what was this? Shit, where'd he go? Chuck Norris being able to swim across the Atlantic without getting wet. And all, yeah, okay. The thing about Chuck Norris is that Chuck Norris was a meme. And the Army, guys in the Army made Chuck Norris memes, and Chuck Norris got mad about them for a while. It took a while for Chuck Norris to embrace Chuck Norris jokes.
To pull the stick out of his
Which
ass.
is funny, which is, yeah.
He didn't have much of a sense of humor.
Right, which tells you right there that Chuck Norris is a bit of an asshole, okay? He doesn't really understand anything. And
he's like super, super, super Christian.
Yeah, that's not the problem. So.
No, I mean, like
the problem.
Nobody can swear around me type of person. He's very, very uptight.
The problem with him is that it's going to be more than that, though. You know what I mean? He doesn't understand humor.
Yeah, okay. He's super uptight.
And,
he can't like fucking chill.
Which makes me think that he's not as authentic as you think he is. Because of course his movies are fake as fuck. All right, Chuck Norris will get his ass whipped in an MMA fight. A pro MMA fighter would fuck him up. But he came from a time before MMA. All right. But, you know, a boxer could probably fuck his ass up. We talked about this in other fucking shows about martial arts. Martial arts weren't as real as we thought they were when we were kids. It's fantasy. Partially. Even heaven forbid, even fucking Bruce Lee is not as authentic as you think. All right. He was good. Bruce was fast. But Bruce will get his ass whipped, all right, by an MMA fighter, you know. Now, could Bruce be retrained as an MMA fighter? Yeah, he could have. He was good. He had talent. But he was a man of his time, you know what I mean? And no, a real big motherfucker pick fucking Bruce Lee up, throw his ass across the fucking... I mean, he didn't weigh anything. He only weighed 145 pounds, all right? It's hard to beat a dude who can pick you up and throw you. Been there and done that, okay? You just can't get the leverage you need to apply any power to a dude's head. The leverage is coming off the ground. And when he's picked you up, you're instantly weaker because you do. Oh, I gotta go to the restroom. Hold on. Jenny's getting bored.
Well, yeah, you're going on and on. I thought you... I got like 10% into my notes. Mr. 88, though, said one Chuck Norris joke, which I haven't heard before. Chuck Norris didn't dial the wrong number. You answered the wrong phone. I never heard that one. I've heard most of the Chuck Norris memes, but that's a new one. That's actually pretty funny. So, yeah, so where was I? I just didn't even get that much past, like, Bob Ross was born in fucking Daytona Beach, and then we got all sidetracked. So, as I said, he was super, super into, like, animal welfare, like, wildlife and stuff, and he actually, like, did an animal rescue. Like, later on, he would rescue injured animals and nurse them back to health and release them into the wild. Later on, we had a TV show, matter of fact, and I kind of remember this, too, from when I was a kid. For, like, I think it was 2 years, he had this little squirrel that he had rescued, which I also kind of related to because I had the same thing, too. Like, a baby squirrel, like, fell out of a really tall tree, and I rescued it. His eyes weren't even open yet, and we kept him, like, for a long time. And so he had one, too, and the squirrel's name was Peapod, and he used to bring him on the show, like, in his pocket. And so he had him for 2 years, and then he released him into the wild. So I thought that was, like, kind of cool. But yeah, he was really, really into animal welfare and, you know, nursing animals back to health. He also had a half-brother named Jim, who will come into play later on. Interestingly, Bob Ross dropped out of high school in the 9th grade. He actually apprenticed to his dad, who was a carpenter. Now, when he was apprenticing with his dad, he actually lost an index finger, or like part of his index finger on his left hand. You never really noticed it on the show. Like, I didn't know that he didn't have part of his finger, like, on his left hand. But when I saw, like, one documentary that kind of showed, like, a close-up of his hand, like, in the palette, you could see that, like, half of his left index finger was gone. But they said because it was his left hand and not his right that it didn't really... You know, it wasn't really that, like, big a deal. So in 1961, when Bob Ross was 18, he enlisted in the Air Force. Now, he was actually put into service as a medical records technician and ended up rising to the rank of Master Sergeant. So he mostly grew up in Florida, but then he served as first sergeant at the clinic at one of the Air Force bases in Alaska. Now, interestingly, he had obviously never seen snow before because he grew up in Florida. So he said he never saw snow until he was 21. And I was like, hey, same. I was also born in Daytona Beach, and I did not see snow until I was 22 years old the first time I went to the UK because it doesn't fucking snow here. So, I'd never seen mountains either because we also don't have mountains. So there's that. So one of his quotes, this is quite famous. because he had a lot of positions in the military when he was in there for a long time, he had to act like kind of mean and tough and everything. And he said, I was the guy who makes you scrub the latrine, the guy who makes you make your bed, the guy who screams at you for being late to work. And he decided when he retired from the military, he was never going to be like that ever again, because he didn't really like having to like fucking yell at people all the time. So he was in the Air Force for actually 20 years. And he first developed his interest in art. He had attended an art class at the USO Club in Anchorage. And one of the things, though, was that at the time, I guess this is, in the 50s and 60s, most of his art instructors were real into, like, abstract art, because that was kind of the thing at the time. And he kind of wanted to paint more traditional stuff, and so I kind of feel like they, so he was always kind of, like, at odds with them about that. One of his quotes was, they'd tell you what makes a tree, but they wouldn't tell you how to paint a tree. So there's that kind of thing, too. But the thing about it, I took a bunch of art classes in high school and college. One thing that my teacher always told me that I thought was really good, because I know that a lot of people, there's kind of a thing between people that paint like traditional or representational art and people that do more like abstract art. And the thing about it is that abstract art is not just like throwing a bunch of shit on the canvas and like thinking, because anybody can do that. But mostly the abstract artists that become famous or become well-known or beloved or whatever usually like learned the traditional way first. My teacher used to say you have to know all the rules before you can break them. You can't just like come out and be like, hey, look, it's a piece of abstract art. You know what I mean? It's not going to fly. You have to know all the rules and know which ones you're breaking. So there's a lot more thought to it than I thought. But the thing about Bob Ross, later on, he would kind of make little digs. He wasn't like a mean person, but he would always make little digs about, like, he would, put his canvas up on his show, and then he'd just like do some background shit or whatever, like just a couple colors. And then he's like, there we go, it's ready to go in the Museum of Modern Art. You know what I mean? Where it was just like a couple colors. Yeah. So he was kind of like making fun, but it's an easy joke to make. I've been to the Museum of Modern Art several times, and it's like, there is some art that looks like that, but a lot of it doesn't look like that. So you know what I mean? I know it's an easy joke to make, though, like making fun of like modern art and shit. Okay, so while Bob was still in the military, he was also working as a bartender part-time, kind of to make ends meet, And one day, when he's in the bar, the TV's on, and it's on PBS, and he sees this little show called The Magic of Oil Painting. This was hosted by a German fella named Bill Alexander. Now, like I said, I had seen this dude was also like really famous back in the day. I kind of feel like Bob Ross supplanted him a little bit, and I think that he was a little bitter about that. Which, like I said, we'll get into that, but I remember Bill Alexander's show too, and he was actually really successful. Like, his show was on all the time. He had like his own line of books, he had his own line of paints and like painting kits and painting supplies and shit like that. So, and he taught classes as well. And Bob Ross was like really interested in this because Bill Alexander was using a technique widely known as alla prima, which I kind of feel like Bill later, he went a little off the deep end and said he invented this. He absolutely did not. That it actually came from the 16th century, and a lot of famous artists have used it. Alla prima is Italian for essentially like at first attempt. Normally, I don't know if you know a lot about oil painting, but oil paints take a long time to dry generally. So in traditional oil painting, what you would do is you would paint a layer, like the background layer, for example, and then you would wait until it dried. And it would usually take several days, a week. It would take a while, depending on how much paint and thinner you'd used. And then once it was completely dry, you would come in and do another layer, and then wait for that to dry, and then come in, and you would do that until the painting was completed. Alla prima is basically, they say it's like wet on wet, which it kind of is. Wet on wet, you don't really have to do the whole thing like in one session. But alla prima is usually done in one session, but other than that, it's pretty much the same. What you're doing is you're essentially using the paint. You're just doing all of it like at once. So you're doing like the background, but you're using like wetter paint and just kind of doing stuff all in one session instead of waiting for stuff to dry like in between layers. And you can get, if you know what you're doing, you can get like a lot of really interesting like blending effects when you do it like that. As I said, this had been developed, I think, in Flanders, like back in the 1500s, like 16th century, whenever it was. So Bill Alexander didn't invent the shit. But Bob Ross had never seen it before, and he sees this guy on TV doing it, like doing a painting, like a landscape painting in like fucking half an hour. And he's like, that shit's amazing. I want to learn to do that. So, yeah, so as I said, it's not a new technique. Van Gogh used it, Velázquez used it, the Impressionists used it, anybody that like paints outdoors, they usually use it. So, you know, it's kind of like a thing where you want to be like spontaneous, you're painting something outside, like getting a landscape, shit like that. So basically what you do, Bob Ross was kind of like, well, I want to train with that guy. So he goes to take classes from that guy, from Bill Alexander. And the two of them actually became friends. And Bob became like a really good, he pretty much mastered the technique, obviously, because he had like a really successful show, which ended up, like I said, supplanting poor old Bill Alexander, even though he was doing essentially the same thing. So after he learned how to do it from Bill, he's still working at the bar. So one thing that he started to do, and he was in Alaska, so he would start doing these landscape paintings on like the bottoms of these like gold, like the pans where you pan for gold. So he would do like landscape paintings on the bottoms of those, and he would like put them up on the wall of the bar, and he would like sell them like for extra money. Now, eventually, he was selling so many of these that he made more money than the military was paying him. And as I said, he'd been in there for a while. So in 1981, he retired from the Air Force. He was a master sergeant, as I mentioned earlier. Now, at this point, he had had one wife prior, with whom he had had his son, Steve. And she either divorced him or she passed away. I can't remember. But he did have some affairs, allegedly, which might have been one of the reasons she divorced him. But he married somebody, his second wife, Jane. So he was married to Jane, and Jane and his son, by his first wife, Steve, they actually said, okay, well, we're going to stay here in Alaska. But Jane gave him $1,000 and said, you go, if you want to pursue this painting thing, then I'm all about it. Here's $1,000. Go and try to do something with that. And Bob said, okay, I'm going to go out and try to make my fortune at this. If I can't do it, like, within X amount of time, then I'll come back and just, like, get a regular job or whatever. So he sets out to do that. So, as I said, he had trained with Bill Alexander, and he actually ended up working for, Bill Alexander had his own company, like an art supply company. As I said, he had, contracts with companies that made paints and various art supplies and had like his branding on them. That's where he made most of his money, that and the books and the classes that he taught. So Bob Ross goes to work for that company and started traveling around the country as a traveling salesman, and he was also teaching classes. So he was like teaching other people the alla prima technique that Bill Alexander had, I guess, showed him how to do, like, and did on TV. Now, eventually, Bill decided to retire, not from the TV show, he was still doing that, but he decided to retire from traveling around doing classes. So what he decided to do, he said, okay, well, Bob was at that point like a certified Bill Alexander alla prima style instructor. So he's like, why don't you take over my classes? Because you're so good at it. Now, fatefully, in 1982, he was doing a 5-day workshop in Florida, obviously where he was from originally. And he ended up meeting Annette and Walt Kowalski. And these two would be his business partners up until he died. And I think they're still alive, amazingly. And as I said, they seem a little touchy about Bob Ross's image and shit like that, like, you know, and now that he's dead, so, yeah. As I said, the Netflix documentary is not real flattering to them, so a lot of the stuff I'm saying is just coming from people, like, from the Netflix documentary and shit like that, but we'll get into that. Now, how they ended up meeting was that Annette and Walt, one of their sons, unfortunately, had died in a car accident. And Annette was so distraught that she just kind of like checked out. And apparently she was just like laying around on the couch all day watching Bill Alexander paint on PBS. Like that was the only thing that made her feel any better. So her husband, Walt, says, well, I'm going to buy, you know, we'll drive down to Florida and I'll get you a 5-day workshop with this Bill Alexander dude you live so much. Maybe that will make you like feel a little bit better. So he did that. However, she didn't know that Bill Alexander had retired from doing the classes and had passed off his classes to this fucking nobody named Bob Ross. So she finds out that this guy who she never heard of is teaching the class, and she's really bummed out about it because she thought it was going to be Bill, who she'd been watching on TV. But they decided, well, you know, we already paid for the shit. We are already going down to Florida because they were from Virginia or like Washington, D.C., Virginia area. So she's like, we already paid for the shit, so let's just go down there. So they go down to take the class. Annette goes in the class and she says within like 5 minutes of Bob Ross talking and like teaching her how to paint, she was like mesmerized. And she said immediately we knew this dude is like something special. And like Walt said something, because there was an interview with him on this other documentary that I watched, that it's like whatever this dude has, we need to figure out how to, what did he say, bottle it? Like bottle it and sell it, which is essentially what they did. But they recognized that he really had something that could really get popular. So she does the class for a week, and at the end of the week, they said, okay, well, come to dinner with us. We have a proposition for you. Because they apparently had some money and that they were going to invest, and they really did, like, believe in him. So they're like, okay, well, we want you to go into business with us. You know, we want you to teach classes up here, like, around, in our stomping ground, like, up around Virginia, Washington, D.C. area. So he said, okay. So they first start out trying to sell these courses. And at first, I think they were just running like newspaper ads generally. And the first few classes that they ran, they actually had to cancel them because nobody signed up. Because nobody knew who the fuck Bob Ross is, which is like hilarious to think of now because everybody in the fucking world knows who he is. But back then, Bill Alexander was the famous guy. But Bill Alexander was not doing classes anymore. He'd retired from that. He still had the TV show, but he wasn't doing the classes. So this guy, Bob Ross, who the fuck is that? Nobody knows. But they tried to set up, they bought like, you know, newspaper ads. They did like demonstrations in the mall and shit like that, like you did back in the 80s. Everybody be in the mall. But it didn't really work. Like nobody really showed up. Now, at this point, I guess Bob still had some of the money that his wife had given him. And this is the point where the infamous perm comes into the thing, because he had normal hair prior to this. But I guess he reasoned that because he didn't have a lot of money for haircuts, that if he got his hair permed, then it would be like less maintenance and it would be like cheaper, like he wouldn't have to go get it like cut all the time. So he got it permed. Now, interestingly, like he had it permed for a while, and then like after a while he got sick of it and he hated it and he wanted to change his hair, but he felt like he couldn't because it had become his trademark by that point. And as I said, if he changed his hair, then nobody would recognize him anymore. So he just had to keep it like that until the day he fucking died, even though he couldn't stand it. Like, I'm sure he liked it at some point because he got it. But then after a while, it seemed like he was like trapped into it because that was like his image. That was his thing. And he couldn't change it. But the initial reason he got it, at least according to everybody that I saw, said because he thought it would save money because it would be less maintenance. He wouldn't need to like get haircuts all the time. So I thought that was like kind of funny. Another thing that I thought was kind of funny was, according to some of his friends, they said whenever he would go back to the hairdresser to get like it re-permed, he always called it getting his springs tightened. That, like, I don't know why that made me laugh so hard, but like the first time I was like, oh, that's so cute. He was so cute. So yeah. So the classes that they did it for, like, nobody showed up. Now, one class, they had, this is according to the documentary The Happy Painter, which is on YouTube. They said they had this one class where one dude showed up. Right? One dude. And it was like an evening class. Because at first they were doing classes during the day, and then they were like, well, maybe everybody's at work, like, let's do some evening classes. They started doing evening classes, but nobody really showed up for those either. But this one class they did, like, one dude showed up. And the Kowalskis were like, we're not doing a class just for one dude. But Bob Ross said, no, we are going to do a class just for this one dude. So he did this whole class just teaching this one dude how to paint. Now, apparently, according to this documentary, the guy was so impressed that Bob had actually taken his time, like, and did this class and just to teach him specifically how to paint, and was like so cool and like humble about it. He said, I tell you what, you know, I'm a businessman, you know, I have a shit ton of money. I'm sure he didn't say that, but he's like, I'll tell you what, he's like, I'll offer you $1 million contract right now if, like, from now on you give me 40% of all of your takings. You know what I mean? Which, to me, I'd have been like, yes, please, cough it up. But Bob and the Kowalskis said no, because they had their own shit going, and they said, no, we think this is going places, so thank you, but no thank you. They didn't take it. I mean, I guess that it worked out good for them in the end, but I kind of feel like, in the moment, I'd probably been like, yeah, $1 million? Okay, yeah. What do you want? Now, so what they decided to do, they said, okay, well, maybe we should do some TV commercials. So what they did was they said, okay, well, Bill Alexander is the famous guy, right? And it's like, you're doing his style, but nobody knows who the fuck you are. So let's do some commercials where Bill Alexander, like, passes the torch, essentially. Like, he'll hand over his 2-inch brush and be like, here's my almighty brush, as he used to say. He'll hand that over to you and say, you know, you're the next anointed whatever, like, of my method. And maybe that will, like, because it's a famous person and you're a not famous person. So, you know, that's how we're going to work that out. So they made a commercial like that. And they ran the Kowalskis, you know, as shitty as, like, a lot of the stuff that people said about them, and you know, it maybe is probably true. Initially, they did believe in Bob Ross enough. I don't know how rich they were at the time that this was all going on, but they were apparently rich enough to, like, pour a shit ton of money into his career at first, and not really being assured of any return. So they did have a lot of confidence in him. So they basically paid for this commercial to be made. They paid for the commercial to run before and after Bill Alexander's show, because they actually did find, because normally, I don't know if you know how, if you're not in the US, you know, public television, obviously they have donors and stuff like that, but they don't run ads. But there were, like, a handful of PBS stations in the country. Some of them were in the Midwest, like in Muncie, Indiana and stuff, that were allowed to run, like, a certain percentage of ads. So they found that market and they said, okay, we're going to run the ad for your class before and after Bill Alexander's show. And they also paid for the commercial to run during Phil Donahue's show, which was, like, massive back then. I'm sure that was probably not cheap, because that was, like, a really, really big, like, daytime talk show back in the 80s. So they ran that, and that was super, super successful. The fact that his name was associated with Bill Alexander, the fact of, you know, everybody seeing the ads. So that, like, really, really helped. And the classes started filling up and getting, like, really, really successful. Now, how he ended up getting a TV show was kind of interesting. 1983, Bob and Annette Kowalski, they show up at this public broadcasting station in Virginia. And initially, they just went there because they wanted to record some more commercials for some of their upcoming classes. They wanted to buy that. So when they were there, like, filming the commercials, the station manager, I think, saw what Bob was doing, like painting the shit, and he's like, holy crap, that's amazing. We should do a show. Like, you know, can you do a show? And Bob's like, sure. Like, how many episodes do you want? It's like, well, if we could do 13 episodes, that's like a season. And he's like, okay, absolutely, we can do that. Here's the problem, though. And this is maybe one of the reasons, because at first when I was reading some of the shit, like, about Bill Alexander and how, like, tetchy he got about stuff later on, I was kind of like, man, what an asshole. But the more I kind of looked into it, I was like, well, he's still kind of asshole, but I could kind of see where he was coming from. Because the thing about it was that he didn't... Okay, he taught Bob Ross that method. If you see the Bill Alexander show, and I'm sure they're probably on YouTube, because I used to watch that on PBS as well. And if you see Bob Ross's thing, I mean, the technique is exactly the same. You know, Bob Ross learned from Bill Alexander. But the thing about it is that Bob Ross even took a lot of his, like, his catchphrases, like happy little trees, happy little clouds, you know, shit like that. He took that from Bill Alexander. Bill Alexander said that shit. Now, it is true that their personalities were, like, diametrically opposed. As I mentioned, Bill Alexander was, like, very brusque. He was very boisterous. He was loud. He was, you know, he was always kind of, like, stabbing at them. He was like, almighty brush, blah, blah, blah. And so he was kind of like that. So he was always kind of yelling, like, not in a mean way, but he was just, like, really, like, excitable. Whereas Bob Ross was, like, super chill. But a lot of the stuff that Bob Ross said and did was very, very similar to what Bill Alexander said and did. You know what I mean? Which is not surprising because it was like a mentor situation. But I kind of feel like in later years, Bill Alexander thought he completely stole, like, all my shtick and got more famous than me. And then, like, Bill Alexander, like, hardly anybody remembers anymore, I feel like, and everybody knows who Bob Ross is. So I could see how maybe you might be a little bitter about that. You know, so there's that. And the whole thing too, I don't think Bill Alexander, because you know how Bob Ross would always, he'd, like, you know, beat the paintbrush, and he'd always say, you know, beat the devil out of it, and then he'd kind of laugh. I don't know if Bill Alexander, because I haven't seen all of the shows, but I don't think he ever said beat the devil out of it, but he did do something similar. Like, he would do the same thing, and he would say, like, he had a little catchphrase about it. So Bob Ross did take a lot of his shtick from Bill Alexander. That is true. And like I said, that that method is pretty much exactly the same. So the problem was that Bill Alexander was totally fine with, you know, being Bob Ross's friend and doing commercials for him and stuff like that when he was just teaching classes in that alla prima method, because Bill Alexander was not teaching classes anymore. He had retired from that. However, Bill Alexander still had a TV show, and he still had his own line of painting supplies. And it was kind of, I don't know if this was, I don't think it was any kind of, like, contract or anything, but I think it was like an unspoken agreement that, you know, yeah, I'll help you out as long as you're not, like, stepping on my dick type of thing. So the fact that Bob Ross and the Kowalskis, like, went and got a TV show that was doing the same thing that Bill Alexander was doing and was, like, in direct competition with him now, kind of made him mad. And then, like, later on, when the Kowalskis were like, hey, you know how Bill Alexander has his own line of paints and paint supplies and stuff? Maybe we should do that too. And then Bill Alexander was like, for fuck's sake, because I thought you guys were not going to... He's like, I was helping you because, you know, you weren't competing with me because I wasn't teaching classes anymore. But now you're directly competing with me because you have a TV show also, and now you also have your own line of paints, which are competing with me. So, like I said, you know, before I looked too much into it, I said, wow, Bill Alexander sounds like a dick. But now I can kind of understand, like, where he was coming from. I don't know how much of this was coming from Bob Ross, though, and some of it might have been coming from the Kowalskis, because they seemed like Bob Ross, according to everybody that knew him, he just wanted to paint, and he just wanted to teach people to paint. He didn't really give that much of a shit about business or money or anything like that. So I kind of feel like the Kowalskis were the ones that were kind of, like, doing that. You know what I'm saying? So we're maybe pushing for that. And, like, maybe Bob Ross, like, went along with it. It's like, yeah, okay, whatever, I see what you're doing. But I don't know if he would have necessarily done that on his own. Like I said, I wasn't there. I didn't know them, but I'm just saying that was the impression that I got. So they kind of just fell ass backwards into a TV show when they went to this TV station to, like, film a commercial. And they were just kind of like, yeah, that's cool. But like I said, because it was public TV, you don't get paid for doing the TV shows, right? I mean, you get paid for like supplemental shit. The TV shows are basically like an advertisement for your live classes where people come and learn from you, your workshops, and if you do books or if you sell paints or shit like that. So that's where you're making your money. You're not making money from the TV show directly. So yeah, so the show was recorded at this public television station in Muncie, Indiana, and basically what Bob at first wanted, which is really funny, I saw some of the sketches like on this documentary. He initially wanted like a background that looked like a studio set that looked like a hunting lodge, but then they were like, they're probably like, where do you think we're getting this money from? But this is a fucking PBS station. Because I kind of feel like, I mean, the show, it was basically shot in the living room of a house. I mean, it's a public TV station, but it's a house. It's like a converted old house. It's a cool looking building, but it's like just an old house. And they're like, so we basically were in the living room.
Studio like this.
Yeah, they were in the living room, and it's like, the black curtain in the background. They're like, we put the black curtain in the background to cover up the fireplace. That was where the fireplace was. And so you only had like a few feet. But in the end, Bob decided, well, no, he liked that better because it was like less distracting, and he felt like it gave like a more intimate kind of thing with the viewer. Like it was just, it was smaller. There was nothing in the background to kind of draw your eye. It was just him talking to you, and there was that kind of shit. Now, the paintings, as I said, were all done actually in between 26 and 30 minutes with minimal edits. The only time they would edit is if something technically went wrong or, if like some shit fell over or something like that. Basically what you saw on there, like him painting it, there was no trickery. There was nothing like that. He painted the whole thing in that amount of time. However, he didn't just pull the shit out of his head. What he would do, usually, except for the second season because that was a whole other thing, but he would usually decide what paintings he was going to do for that season. Like I said, so it was 13 shows, and he would paint versions of all of them beforehand. And then when he would go to record that show, he'd put that one in like in the background so he could see it like to refer to. But he was like, don't ever show anybody that the guide painting that's like off camera. He's like, because in case I don't have time to like finish the one that he's doing live, and like, what I didn't put the cabin in there or something like that. He didn't want like everybody getting mad. But he did have another painting like over there that he was looking at, so it wasn't just like pulling it out of his butt. You know what I mean? So he did have that. So the thing about it too, what he would do is for every show, every episode, he would paint 3 versions of the painting that you saw him paint. The first one, as I mentioned, was done prior to the taping, and that was what he would sit off camera so he could look at it, like refer to it while he was painting. And then there was the second version, which is the one that he did live, essentially. It was live on tape, that people actually saw him paint. And then after the episode was done, he would usually go back home and he would paint a real detailed version of it that would be included in the book. Like he would paint it, and then Annette Kowalski would stand behind him and take a whole bunch of pictures with her 35mm camera. Because at the end of every season, of the show, they would put out a book that had a how-to of every single painting that he had done on every single episode. So he had to do every single painting like 3 times. You know what I mean? Like once just for a guide, once live, and once so she could photograph so they could do the how-to. So that's how he would do it. So every single season they had a book come out. Now the first season that they did, which was, as I said, just this one show that they lucked into, they obviously, nobody knew who Bob Ross was yet, so they didn't have a publisher. So the Kowalskis, to their credit, did cough up $30,000 to publish the first season's Bob Ross how-to book. So yeah, it was expensive to self-publish your own books back then. Now it doesn't cost anything other than time, and in case you gotta hire somebody else to do your shit. But back then, yeah, $30,000, and you had to like buy a whole bunch of like fucking copies and then do it your goddamn self. I will also note that when you see him do the episodes, he actually did between 3 and 9 episodes a day. Like, what they would do is that they would do like a season every quarter. So he's like, so the first week of the quarter, they would have Bob come in like Sunday or Monday, and he would do like 3 or 4 shows, and then he would do like 3 or 4 more shows like the next day, and they would just keep doing it. And then like Thursday they'd have to like look through them and make sure like and fix anything. So he would do like a lot of shit, because like I said, he had to do a lot of paintings, and then he had to show up for the shit and like talk and everything like that. So it was like a lot of work. He also told me his kind of uniform, if you want to call it that, of jeans and his little just regular solid colored collared shirt. He wanted that, so I thought this was kind of funny. He wanted the show to retain a timeless quality, which I guess worked, but the afro kind of worked against that, I will say. But again, if he didn't have the afro, you wouldn't recognize him. So you know what I mean? Another thing, too, was that this was funny. He said, like I said, he did like the whole like talking softly and whispering and stuff, mainly because one, it was mainly female audience, so he felt like maybe people didn't want to get yelled at, because Bill Alexander was kind of known for being like louder and like his voice was harsher, so he wanted to go like in a more mellow kind of route. But he also said, I want to talk as though I'm just talking to one particular person. He's like, so when I do the show, I'm addressing one person, and that's a person I'm really crazy about. Annette Kowalski phrased it as, he talked as though he's speaking to one woman in bed. Because he did say some, like, kind of suggestive sounding stuff. Just caress it. Just caress it. You know what I mean? It's like, because I've seen a couple documentaries that kind of, like, that edited all that stuff together, where he was just, like, saying that kind of stuff.
He's just playing around.
Yeah, he's just, like, doing, like, sexy talk. Yeah.
He's like,
well, and
he... I'm rubbing on it.
Yeah.
Rubbing. Just take the end of your brush and just kind of lick it into a little circle. A circle, pressure over the spot, just licking it.
Yeah, it would be stuff like that.
He's fucking around.
Well, he absolutely knew what he was doing, and he said, and everybody else knows what he's doing too. Yeah. Like, you know, I think that's why a lot of people really like the show. Yeah, because you felt like it was like, you know, there was that.
Little circles. Little high pressure, wet circles. Rough, but yet wet.
That sounds like some shit he would say, probably.
Yeah, of course. Fuck that.
Granther said Bob Ross was a poonhound who knew what to say to get women viewers all hot and worked up. Yeah, he probably did. I mean...
Well, most of them were probably in their 60s or 70s when they were on the fucking other end of the screen during the time he was fucking running.
Probably.
Only old women watched, out in the middle of nowhere, watched fucking PBS. Or little kids.
I watched it. Well, yeah, I was a little kid.
Kids, yeah.
I was a little kid. I mean, I wasn't a little kid. I was probably like 12?
Yeah.
Maybe. No, maybe not even that old. Yeah, I was probably like 11 or 12 years old. Which Ross has laid more pipe, Tom or Bob?
Bob.
Probably. No, I don't know.
Probably Bob.
So yeah, so obviously, this whole gestalt that he had working, absolutely was effective, because the show was a major success, and over the next couple of years, at first it was just kind of like regional, like I said, like in the Midwest, and after that, like, it just got picked up by more and more PBS stations like around the country, and soon it was national and became, the most famous, the most popular like art instruction show on PBS.
Let me say something real quick.
What's that?
Granther's in there fucking talking, saying there's for y'all who don't know, Granther's and I went to high school together. He's ex-cop, I'm ex-soldier. He goes, very thin line between cops and robbers. Both use violence to accomplish their daily missions. Both lived on the fringes of society. Both can manipulate people. Only one gets a pension like Granther's. Right. Another big thing, the main thing, I've done a whole study on it. I fucking read the psychology. The main thing is social class and IQ. That's the main difference. It's the same personality type. Just that had you been born dumb and a lot poorer, you'd have been a crook. But there are criminal masterminds out there. Just that they're not as common anymore. They're usually during fucking hard times. Like Italian gangsters in the U.S., they were high-quality guys. They couldn't get jobs, so they fell to crime. But as soon as they could, they got out of it. You know, their descendants all own private businesses now. You know, they didn't choose crime. They just didn't have a choice a lot of times. Okay, that's all I want to say.
Tammy said, what happened to all those paintings? Yeah, Bundy Data says Kowalskis. Yeah, as far as I know, the Kowalskis still have all of them, and they're just stored away in boxes that are numbered. I don't know why they're keeping all of them. I don't know. It's very weird. But, you know, we'll get into that later because, you know, the Smithsonian actually has a couple of his shit, and we'll get into that, why that is. So, by the end of the 1980s, The Joy of Painting, his show, which actually they named it that because, you know, around that time, it was just everything was the joy of something. The joy of sex, the joy of cooking, the joy of blah, blah, blah. So that was like a big thing. So that's why they named it that. Joy of Painting, by the end of the 1980s, had 80 million worldwide viewers and got 200 letters every goddamn day. Now, they also established an 800 number where you could call the show and, like, ask if you were having, like, problems with your paintings. And you can, like, call up and, like, ask Bob Ross. Apparently, it's like, hey, my fucking happy little tree isn't all that happy. And so he would maybe, like, solve the problem for you. So what they started to do was essentially they started to, like, franchise it out. So Bob still, you know, he was doing the show, and I'm assuming he was still doing some classes at this time. But what they decided to do was essentially, like I said, franchise it. So they started doing training classes for other Bob Ross certified instructors. So you would go, I think it was a 3-week class, and you would go and you would learn the alla prima method, and then you would be certified to go around the country and teach your own. So they had, like, you know, they had little tendrils all over the country where they had different people teaching the same exact method, and they were all, like, certified Bob Ross instructors. They had all that going. So it's funny. The funny thing is they weren't just trained in the technique, apparently. They were also trained to have that, like, very soothing kind of cadence, and that very, like, there are no mistakes or only happy accidents, and it's just like, you know what I mean? So they're trained to be, like, very encouraging and very soothing and that kind of thing. So I thought that was kind of funny too. So as I said, within a few years, much to Bill Alexander's chagrin, Bob Ross was way more famous than him. Now, what ended up happening with this, even though, obviously, like I said, the two guys were friends because it was like a whole mentor-student relationship. And the second season of The Joy of Painting, he dedicated to Bill Alexander, like the book. And he was very open about Bill Alexander being the guy that taught him the alla prima method and saying, you know, he taught me and now I want to teach all of you. But the more popular he got, and like I said, I kind of feel like Bill Alexander got thinking, like, maybe, yeah, it was fine when you were teaching my classes, but now you have a TV show, and then later when they started doing their own, like, line of paint and stuff, like, hey, you're stepping on my dick, so he kind of got, like, upset about it. But, yeah, so he started getting more and more popular, and then Bill, like, kind of had a little bit of a flip out, and they didn't, like, really talk anymore. Basically, in 1991, Bill Alexander said to the New York Times, he betrayed me. I invented wet on wet, which no, he didn't, because like I said, that has been going on since the fucking 16th century. I trained him, and he thinks he can do it better. So, yeah, he got a little cranky about it. Like I said, might not have just been, because I think that's bullshit that he said I invented wet on wet, because like I said, no, he didn't. Impressionists were doing that, like fucking Van Gogh was doing that, you know, fucking Velasquez was doing that, like back in the 1500s or whatever. So shut up. But I will give him that Bob Ross did kind of, they didn't sign anything, but they did kind of like have an understanding that it's like, hey, I'll teach your classes, but I'm not going to step on your dick as far as like a TV show or having my own line of paints. And then they kind of did that anyway, like while Bill Alexander was still on TV. And like I said, it's a direct competition because it's the exact same style. So there was that. So I can see why Bill Alexander was mad because, yeah, that was his student and the student got more famous. But, you know, he kind of sounded like a bitter old man too. I don't know. I don't know where I fall on it. I can see why he's mad, but he probably shouldn't have been. Bob Ross was just, I don't even know if he was a better painter necessarily, but people just related to him more, I guess. And that's just kind of the way
character has a lot to do with success, not so much quality.
That's what I'm saying. Like, because their paintings like looked very similar to me. Yeah. Like the technique is exactly the same. But maybe, like I said, and Bill Alexander was actually quite famous. I remember him being on TV, and he was very successful, like selling his books and everything like that. But it just Bob Ross came along, and I guess everybody liked his chill attitude better, and that's just, like I said, that's just
in the medium.
How the mop flops, as my grandma used to say.
In the medium of society, character is what decides. Just look at what's that scientist, that astronomer we were talking about?
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Neil deGrasse Tyson. Neil deGrasse Tyson is not the best astronomer. He's the best communicator for astronomers. He's the guy you want on TV. He's the one you want representing astronomy and astrophysics because he can communicate his character. It's that a community is a fucking group, all right? And most of those guys got their fucking noses buried in books. And you put them in the spotlight, and they're not the kind of guys that can handle it. You know what I mean? Fucking Neil deGrasse he's got style. You know what I mean? He's an alpha. He's gonna represent. You know, I like Neil deGrasse Tyson.
I do as well.
Yeah, and he was a great successor to Carl Sagan. Sagan was like that too. He's the kind of guy you wanted on television. And that's why they had deGrasse Tyson on fucking Cosmos when they brought Cosmos back. That's the right guy for that.
Yeah, because, and I think we mentioned this before, it doesn't always go together that somebody is like shit hot at science and also is like really like charismatic and good on TV.
Never. It's never.
And also is like a good public speaker or a good communicator.
Right.
Usually those two things don't usually go together. No. So when it does, that's like a real good.
That's the yeah.
That's a real good thing.
Right. Those are the guys that you want on television, representing their trade. You know?
Yeah. So Bob's show ended up running from January 1983 to May 1994, but reruns are still on nowadays. There's whole YouTube channels. There's an official YouTube channel, and the show is on all over the world. They know who the dude is in fucking Japan. They know who the dude is in fucking the Middle East. They had the show all over the world, which kind of blew my mind. I was just kind of like, I thought it was more like an American, maybe a European thing. I didn't realize that like in fucking Middle East and Asia and shit like that they had this show over there, but they absolutely do. So they know who that is. They've got their own Bob Ross certified instructors. People take classes and shit like that and like learn that method. It's crazy. Now, so what ended up happening, as I said, later on, they decided to do, hey, let's do what Bill Alexander does, because he had his own company selling art supplies. Like he was with, I don't want to say it was Weber, it might have been, but he had a paint supply company, and he would go in there and like mix the paints the way he wanted them, and pick the brushes that he wanted and how he wanted them, and then they would brand it with his name. So the Kowalskis were like, hey, we need to do that with Bob Ross. So they did. So they were able to promote this line of art supplies and the class recordings and shit like that into essentially, like, at the time they were making like $15 million a year, which was a lot, like Bob Ross Inc. or BRI as they call it. And then, after Bob died, which we'll get into in a minute, like the ownership of that passed completely to Kowalskis, which was one of the main things that the Netflix documentary was looking into, because obviously his family is like super not happy about that. Yeah. Now, as I mentioned, Bob estimated that he painted about 30,000 paintings during his lifetime. Now, they don't really come up on the art market, because Tammy was asking about that. When they do, the sale prices are usually 10 grand and up. But they've never come up in any of the major auction houses, and Bob Ross Inc. Doesn't sell any of them. I think the only ones that get sold are ones that other people had, like, you know, perhaps like from his early days, like he gave one to somebody else or somebody that did a class with him and took one or something like that. I don't think they sell any of them, the Kowalskis. Now, as I mentioned, the only person, apparently, at least according to the Netflix documentary, that is authorized to authenticate a genuine Bob Ross painting is Annette Kowalski herself. And she's the one that runs the company. I think their daughter runs it now, but I don't know. I'm assuming they're still alive. And as I mentioned earlier, also in the documentary, that German guy that worked for the company and said, oh, I saw like people just like signing his name on shit, and he thought that was kind of fucked up. Now, so interestingly, there's kind of a whole thing. I feel like when Bob was on TV, and I kind of feel like Thomas Kinkade kind of got this too, and I've kind of made fun of Thomas Kinkade because of this as well. But people that are quote-unquote real artists or like art critics or whatever were kind of like shitting on Bob Ross a little bit. It's like, well, it's not real art. It's just like, you know, it's just like painting like shit that would like hang in a hotel, and you're just not an artist, and you're teaching other people who aren't artists and blah, blah, blah. And they got like a little bit snotty about it. But as I said, Bob Ross never really seemed to care about that. His whole thing was he just liked to paint. He thought it was relaxing, and he would say, like, even on the show, he would say stuff like, this is the only place where I can be completely free. Like, the world can be, like, however I want it to be. And so that's kind of the message that he was trying to get across. And as I said, he was trying to get people who thought that they couldn't create anything or were afraid to create anything. He wanted to show them that they could do it, that it wasn't that hard. If you practiced, if you really wanted to do it, you could do anything you wanted. And that was kind of like his whole attitude. He didn't give a shit if it was like fine art or hung in a museum or anything like that. He was just wanted to teach people and like just wanted people to like see what they could do and like see what they could come up with. Honestly, he was on, I saw this clip. He was on the Phil Donahue show in 1994, and Phil says to him, say out loud that your work will never hang in a museum. And Bob Ross said, no. Well, maybe it will, but it probably not the Smithsonian. And then Donahue asked him why, and he said, this is art for anyone who's ever wanted to put a dream on canvas. It's not traditional art, it's not fine art, and I don't try to tell anybody it is. So like I said, he wasn't real concerned about, I don't think he saw it as just like assembly line necessarily. He did seem to enjoy it, and he seemed to really like doing it, obviously, but he wasn't doing it for maybe the same reasons that like an artiste would be doing it. You know what I mean? He just wanted to be like, I just wanted to paint like a beautiful scene that I saw in Alaska, and I just thought it was beautiful, so I painted it, and I want to show you how to paint it so you can do it too, and you can paint however you want, like even though you thought you couldn't. And that was really all he seemed to worry about. He didn't really give a shit about you know, if he was seen as like a great artist or if he made a lot of money at it or anything like that. He really didn't seem to care about that. You know, and like I said, yeah, I was talking about the beat the devil out. Do you remember how he did that? Like how he would do the brush and he would like smack it like that. Get the paint thinner, and then he'd go beat the devil out of it. Yeah. He, like I said, he might have got that from Bill Alexander, although I don't remember if Bill Alexander ever said beat the devil out of it, but he did say other shit like that. Now, what?
I was going to say, if you guys have never seen his paintings, they're good. They're real good. It's mostly illusion, though. He's using a knife. He's using a paint knife, brushes. He's using a bunch of little tricks. He'd even use toilet paper to make it's illusion. But
I didn't see any toilet.
Yeah, I thought he took a little bit of toilet paper one time and started padding it in the trees to make the leaves.
No, he always used brushes. I mean, he did like 400 shows, so he might have been. Yeah. But no, he always used brushes and a palette knife. That was it.
Palette knife, right?
Yeah, it's palette knife.
I thought he used not really toilet paper, but I thought it was like a rolled up fucking rag one time to make some leaves.
He might have, but he usually just used that like round brush, that sable brush that he just kind of like made.
And it happens.
Highlights.
It happens fast. It's like it's not fine art.
That's the method,
right? Yeah, it's fast. Fast. It's kind of like taking a photograph, but it's not accurate. It's accurate spiritually. That's what he did. But I don't think he was actually showing He was making it up as he was going along. He wasn't doing it. I don't think he would take a picture of anything and then paint what was in the picture. Was he?
No, he would paint the landscape prior.
Okay.
I don't know if he was looking at anything when he painted it initially.
Right.
So he had another painting that he was looking at that he had painted earlier.
Okay.
Like of a mountain or whatever. But he wasn't looking at a photograph.
Okay.
He was looking at a painting that he had done earlier.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I remember each show was a little bit different. He would do some things different sometimes.
One of my favorite things that he did, and I remember this episode, and they have clips of it online. He said that he had gotten a letter from a guy who was really sad, and he was like lamenting that it's like, well, I'll never be able to learn to paint. Like, I know you say everybody can, but I'll never be able to learn to because I'm colorblind, and I just see everything as like shades of gray. And so Bob said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to paint a painting on this show all in shades of gray, just so I can show you that it can be done.
Yeah.
And he fucking did it. He did a whole show. It was like this really like beautiful, like wintry kind of scene that was all like blacks and grays and stuff like that. And I just thought that was so cool. Just to show that guys, like, just because you can't see colors doesn't mean that you can't do paintings. You know what I mean? He's like, look, I did one without any colors, and it like turned out it turned out nice. But yeah. So there was that. So as I said, most of the landscapes were from Alaska. He was also real big into. This was kind of funny. I saw this on the documentary. He was real into like country music because, of course, he was. He was from Florida. Yeah. And 1987, he got to go to the Grand Ole Opry, and Hank Snow was performing. And they said they got him up on stage, and he was like kind of shy to go up there, but they said the audience went ape shit.
Of course, they all knew who he was.
Yeah. They said he said he couldn't believe it. Well, because they said everybody that knew him said that he was like super humble. Right. You know what I mean? Like, and he was always real into, like, anybody that came to him. He would do shit like. He got like a letter from some old lady that said, I'm driving like an hour to see you, and it's like she's old and she has a walker and she had done a painting and she wanted to show it to him, and he waited in the fucking studio for her till like 11 or 12 at night until she got there so she could come up and like give him a hug and shit. They said he was just like a nice man, and it's like he really, really cared about people learning to paint, and that was like all he cared about. He was just a genuinely nice person, which, like I said, you don't really see that much. Like, I don't know. I kind of feel like most people are like kind of not assholes, but like just kind of more out for themselves, or they're not real genuine like that. But they said he absolutely was. They said he was exactly like he was on the show, and he was just very passionate about art. He was passionate about, about it, because he kind of felt like painting sort of saved him in a way, and because he'd been in the military and he liked it, but he was like, yeah, it was, I had to like shout at people all the time. I didn't really like that. And he's like, and I didn't really like all this negativity and like bad news and all this kind of stuff. He's like, I just wanted to be happy and I wanted to make other people happy. He was sick of that shit. Yeah, he was just kind of sick of it. And when he started painting, he said it just like opened up a whole new, it's like it not only like chilled him out, but he's like, it also made me look at nature like in a different way. Like he noticed things that he wouldn't notice before, and it made him like appreciate everything more. I can't believe he died so young. I'm older than him already. Yeah, which is crazy. Oh, I mean, he weirdly, I mean, he was a smoker, lifelong, and he seemed to like have, he seemed pretty resigned to the fact that he was probably gonna die like kind of young. Not really sure why he thought that. Maybe just because he smoked a lot. I'm not really sure. But yeah, so it's maybe, I don't know. So yeah, so
back in those days, guys in their 30s thought they were a lot older than they really are. It's funny, I'll run into people that are in their 50s at the fucking biker bar, and I look at them and I go, "We're the same age." They look a lot, they look a lot older. And fucking some of those people are there. Some of those, like, remember the girl that died? Yeah. She thought I was in my 30s. Yeah. And she was making fun of me. "Oh, you sitting here saying you're young. You look younger than me." And it was weird. A couple days later, she died.
And how old did you say she was?
She was 34.
Yikes.
Yeah. Yeah. I could show you guys a video of her. I knew she was going to die. I'm famous now at the biker bar because I told everybody she was going to die. And then she died a couple days later.
You did it.
Yeah. No.
No, I'm just teasing.
No, fucking, I told her, I says, you got to get her help. She's going to die. We believe she says somebody's going to pick her up and kill her. You got to get her out of it because she was on those drugs. Somebody did pick her up and killed her. I was thinking serial killer. No, it was a dude on a motorcycle. Picked her up and he wrecked and it killed her. He was on the same shit she was on. They were all methed out.
I mean, that's what I mean. It's like, particularly women like that are like really, really vulnerable.
Yep.
You know, to shit like that.
A dude who was just like her saw her and come on the bike, you know what I mean? Fucking, and they were riding from one bar to the next, and he was fucking on meth. And they were doing meth and shit, fucking, and it killed her. He ran off the road. An accident happened. Ran off the road. Fucking hit something. She went flying. She was killed instantly. He's still alive, or last I heard, he's alive. He was in critical condition. But I showed a video of her a couple weeks back. Yeah,
scary.
Dead. I knew she was gonna die. So I'm famous over there now. They know about the show and everything.
Nostradamus.
Yeah, they know.
They
about
might
the show.
be watching right now.
They might be.
We were talking about Bob Ross.
Yeah.
And his happy little trees.
Yeah. They were like, how'd you know that was going to happen? I says, it was obvious. It wasn't obvious to you? They're like, no. I says, I could tell she was going to die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, somebody mentioned earlier, in the early 1990s, only a few years from when Bob Ross was going to die, sadly, he actually got a little bit of a resurgence because he did like some spots for MTV, because like I said, it was kind of like the whole Gen X ironic thing. I don't really know if he ever really went away, though. I kind of feel like, I mean, nowadays, shit's everywhere. It feels like there's like a lot of shows on now that are kind of like referencing him. People dress up as him for Halloween. There's like fucking Bob Ross products like all over the place. Like everybody knows who he is. And I feel like a lot of that, like especially like the younger crowd that probably came from that Twitch thing like in 2015. But even before that, I feel like he never really went away. So I don't even know if resurgence is the right word. Now, around 1995, one of the things that Bob Ross had always wanted to do was do a kids show about, I think it was like about just about nature, like in general. And he did a pilot for it, and you can see like pieces of it online still. I think it was called Elmer and Friends, The Adventures of Elmer and Friends. Now, apparently the Kowalskis said absolutely not, don't do it, because he had cancer at that point, and they said, well, you look sick, and they didn't want anybody seeing him looking like that. But he absolutely wanted to do it, but unfortunately he was only strong enough to do like the pilot episode. You can see it. He doesn't look bad. He's wearing a wig, but because his hair had fallen out, obviously because of the cancer, so he had like an afro wig on because that was like his trademark, which like I said, okay. But if you didn't know, like you probably wouldn't. He doesn't look that bad, I didn't think. But yeah, you can see it. So the series did kind of go on, I guess, or they did show it like after he died. But that was one thing that he always wanted to do, was like do a kids show. So at least he did get to do it like a little bit. So again, there's not a huge amount about his personal life. So like I said, he was married 3 times, although that doesn't sound as, I know that sounds like, oh my God, but it's not as bad as it sounds. His first wife, like I said, I think divorced him for various reasons. I think Steve, who is the guy that's on the Netflix documentary, like his older son, that was his mom. Now, his first wife is named Vivian, and apparently, I guess, she divorced him, I think, because he, like, because of infidelity, and I think she maybe died later. Now, Steve, interestingly, when he was growing up, he would be on The Joy of Painting sometimes because he also knew the method, and he would teach classes on his own. He was on the show, and I kind of feel like, at least according to what Steve said on the documentary, he's like, you know, I always thought that my dad wanted me to like take over the show like after he was gone. He's like, but at the time he was still like fairly young, and he's like, you know, I didn't really want to do what my dad wanted me to do. I wanted to do my own thing, even though he was a good painter in his own right. He could paint just as good as his dad, but he's like, I didn't really want to do that. And I kind of feel like maybe he's sort of sad about that now. He's like, we used to argue about it a lot because Bob was like, no, I want you to, like, you know, after I'm gone, I want you to, like, carry on the mantle or, like, carry on the torch. And Steve didn't really want to do it. But now that he's, like, older, he seems like he kind of, like, regrets that a little bit. I could be putting words in his mouth, I'm not sure, but that's kind of, like, what it seemed like to me. But he is an instructor, and he's, like I said, every bit as good a painter as his dad was. And so, I don't know. So that's kind of sad. Interestingly, too, like, after his dad died, he was mad at the Kowalskis for essentially, like, having complete legal rights to Bob Ross's name and image. So Steve was going to try and strike out on his own and do his own company, like with his own branded products and his own classes. But it didn't work out because of, like, legal ramifications. Even though Steve Ross is his name, legally, because the Kowalskis have such a stranglehold on Bob Ross, on his name, on his image, on the company, he doesn't really have any legal recourse to do shit, at least under his own name. If he did, he'd have to call the company something else, I would guess. And maybe he would have to, like, distance himself from that, because the Kowalskis are, by all accounts, very, very protective of the Bob Ross brand. And even the dude's own son apparently can't start his own company with that name or that any relation to it because of that. So, yeah. So, as I mentioned, Steve is actually Bob's first wife's son. And like I said, they divorced because I guess Bob cheated on her, allegedly. I don't really know. And then she died not too long after. So then Steve and Bob essentially, like, was left like a single father. And then he married Jane, who's his second wife, and they were married a really long time. They didn't have any children together, but like I said, they both raised Steve. Now, Bob seemed very, very devoted to Jane, and when him and Jane were running the company with the Kowalskis, Jane was pretty much, she did all the administrative work for the company, like, pretty much. Weirdly, her and Walt, who was Annette Kowalski's husband, would do all the administrative and money shit, and Bob and Annette would go out on the road and do all the classes and do all the tour and shit, like, and do the show and everything. Now, allegedly, at least according to the Netflix documentary, Bob and Annette had an affair. I don't know if that's true, but Steve, his son, says that he heard his parents arguing about it because Jane, the wife, found out about it. Like, he said, I heard her say, have you had relations with that woman? And apparently he admitted it, and I guess she forgave him, and they, like, moved on from it, because the two couples were, like, working together all the time, but it was, like, opposite. Like, each one was working with each other's spouses. So probably inevitable, like, that some bad shit happened, but I don't know if it's true. But allegedly, according to the son, and according to a couple other people too, like, that knew them at the time, Bob and Annette Kowalski did have kind of a thing going on. Like, they had a little bit of an affair. So there's that. However, when Bob's wife Jane died in 1992, also of cancer, Bob was, like, inconsolable and said, so my whole life went to hell in a handbasket, he said, like, after she died. 2 or 3 weeks after she died, Bob Ross then got the diagnosis that he also had lymphoma.
Damn, everybody's smoking them damn cigarettes.
Now, I'm not sure if this is entirely true, but some sources said that he had had cancer before and had gone through chemo and was in remission. So this might have been the second time. So maybe that's why, like, he thought he was going to die young, because it had already happened once. I'm not sure if that's true or not, because, like, Wikipedia doesn't say that or anything like that, but a couple of other sources that I saw in, like, one of the documentaries said that he had lymphoma before and was in remission. But he got the diagnosis again only a couple weeks after his wife died, that he had it. Now, he was kind of, like I said, he was very private, like, about his personal life. He pretty much didn't tell anybody that he was dying, except for his very, very closest friends. Interestingly, 1995, 2 months before he died, he married his third wife, as I said, Linda Brown. They think that he only married... She was a nurse that was taking care of him. They think that he only married her for legal reasons, because he was afraid that after he died, that the Kowalskis were going to take complete possession of his name and the company and he wasn't going to have any recourse, or like, because he wanted some of the company to go to his son, Steve, apparently. And he was afraid that they were going to like steal his money. Now, according to the Netflix documentary, allegedly, not too long before Bob Ross died, I'm talking about 85 pounds, all his hair had fallen out, like bedridden, close to death, that the Kowalskis allegedly kept calling him saying, you need to sign this contract, pretty much signing the whole company over to them. We own your name, we own your image, we own the company in totem, and we have all rights to it, and your son doesn't have any right to it, and his half-brother, who was the other guy that was in on it, Jimmy, they don't have any right to it. And Bob Ross absolutely would not. And his son said that he heard him scream, and he's like, Bob Ross obviously did not scream at anybody. But he's like, I heard him scream into the phone, you're not taking my name. That's what he said. I don't know if that's true, but that's what his son said. So he said he was really, really pissed that he felt like he's like, they're harassing me on my deathbed, like to get me to sign this thing. And Bob Ross wouldn't sign it. So there was that whole thing. But in the end, it ended up not mattering because after Bob died in 1995, the Kowalskis did absolutely take over. There was a whole like legal wrangling issue, but it turned out that the Kowalskis did absolutely have the rights over his name, his image, everything like that. So they still control all of the company. So anytime you see anything, any kind of Bob Ross branded merchandise, any kind of like the Joy of Painting books, or you know, the YouTube channel or anything like that, it has to go through them. And if you try to do some shit without consulting them, then they will allegedly sue you. They're apparently like really sue happy. As I said, I don't know if this is true. I don't know if they're as monstrous as the Netflix. I don't know if it's monstrous, but the Netflix documentary doesn't paint a real flattering picture of them. And it does say that they approached them like to give their side of the story, and they wouldn't. So that the Netflix documentary is mostly coming from Steve and like from friends of theirs. Friends of theirs said that like really close friends of Bob Ross said, we didn't even know that Bob Ross had died until we read about it in Newsweek. Like the Kowalskis didn't even tell us, and because we wanted to go to the funeral, but we didn't find out about it until later. So it's like almost like they were trying to like pretend he wasn't dead because he was like their cash cow, and they didn't want anybody to really know that he was gone, so they could just like keep running the company as if he was still alive. That was their assessment of it. So I don't know if that's true, but that's how some of them felt, and they were really pissed that they didn't find out from the Kowalskis that Bob had died until later on. But yeah, he died very, very young. And so, yeah, it was really sad. So, yeah, he was only 52. He died July 4th, 1995, in Orlando, actually. And so, interestingly, one of his friends, John Tham, I think is how you pronounce his last name, he said this on the Netflix documentary, too, that he wondered if maybe the paint thinner that Bob Ross used all the time had something to do with the cancer. Which I guess is possible, because the way that he used, I mean, he used a lot of paint thinner, like the wet on wet technique. You have to use a lot of paint thinner for that, like to keep the paint kind of supple. And, you know, he would like beat the paintbrush like against the fucking thing on the easel. And so paint thinner was going everywhere. So it's probably like going up your nose and stuff. So I don't imagine that's good, but I don't know if that would have like caused the cancer, but it's possible. So the weird thing about it is his grave, which is here in Florida. His gravestone says Bob Ross, television artist, on it, and it actually has his like the logo of BRI, like Bob, which is his face, like a kind of a stylized thing of his face with the afro. And I don't know, I just thought that was kind of weird that his grave has like, yeah, it's a picture of him, but it's still like the logo of the company. I don't know. Maybe that's what he wanted. I don't know. But that's what's on his gravestone. And people still come to the gravestone like all the time and like leave their little paintings on it and flowers and shit like that. I don't know. It's just like fucking sad. But yeah, so I would recommend, if you want to see like two sides of the story, it's really fascinating. Go on YouTube and watch Bob Ross, the Happy Painter. That's kind of like I want to say like the sanitized, like happy clappy one. And the Kowalskis are on that one being interviewed. And so they don't say anything controversial on there. The Netflix one is more from, it's mostly Steve, his son, and other people that knew him. Oh, and I also want to talk about, too, like also on the Netflix documentary was the Jenkins, who were like a couple of artists. And I remember they had a show on PBS back in the day, too. They weren't in direct competition with Bob Ross or Bill. They didn't do landscapes. They did like still life, like flowers. And they had like a different method. So they had their own thing going on. They had their own books. They had their own contract with Weber that made their brushes and paints and stuff. And they think that particularly after Bob, they didn't have any issue with Bob Ross. They thought he was a great guy. But they said like after he died or when he was getting sick and like the Kowalskis had more control, allegedly, they think that the Kowalskis were trying to like essentially like ruin their careers because they said once Bob Ross was, you know, kind of on the way out or was on the decline, like his health, they said Annette Kowalski had her own show where she started painting flowers in the same method that the Jenkins used. And she even put out a flower painting book that the Jenkins said straight up like ripped off a lot of the wording and the diagrams and stuff like that from their books. So they were pissed about that. And then they had a contract with Weber Art Supplies for like a really long time. And they had a very specific, exclusive, I think it was like a badger hair, like line of brushes. And they had those forever and they were exclusive to them. And they're like soon after like the Kowalskis had more control, allegedly, there was a thing where Weber called them and said, hey, we can't do the badger hair brushes for you anymore. We're not doing them anymore. And they're like, okay, whatever. And then they found out that the Kowalskis had taken those badger hair brushes and branded them as Bob Ross brushes and were selling them through Weber. So actually the Jenkins ended up losing their Weber contract and they ended up losing their TV show. And they think it was a direct result of the Kowalskis fucking with them. I don't know if that's true or not, but they're still mad about it. And they're on the Netflix show. So that's actually, and I remember their show as well. They were also on. And like I said, it wasn't a direct competition because they were doing a different thing. But they were doing like more hobby type painting and more still life type stuff. But yeah. Zach said, thank you very much, Zach. It always seemed to me like Bob's hairdo would be a great place to hide things. He just, I wonder if he ever did that on any of his 400 shows. He just like stuck the brush up there. You know, he had to be like fucking tempted. Danny Rolling Ghostface, hey, we haven't seen you in a while. What do Bob Ross paintings and female adult film stars have in common? They're both filled with happy little accidents.
Dang.
Oh, yeah, probably. But yeah, so yeah, the Happy Clappy documentary is on YouTube called The Happy Painter. And then the more negative one is on Netflix, and it's called Bob Ross, Happy Accidents, Betrayal, and Greed, which, like I said, is kind of about the Kowalskis. So it's good to like watch both of those and get like sort of a both sides. Kind of, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. The one that's on YouTube, the Happy Painter one, is from quite a while back. It's from 2011. So it's more like laudatory about the whole situation and much more like upbeat. But it's kind of interesting to see the two and like contrast them. So I watched the negative one like last night and I watched the positive one today, so I thought that was like kind of interesting. And like I said, there's another guy, I can't remember what his channel was, but he did like an hour-long thing about it today, and I thought that was... But somebody said earlier that the one about the video on YouTube about the Irish drunks like trying to paint a Bob Ross painting like according to the go-to, it's like fucking... Yeah. That sounds really funny. I'm gonna have to like look that up and watch it because that's probably like fucking hilarious. But yeah, so I guess that's we probably got to the end of it, right?
Yeah, we got to the end of it. Look, man, it's time for us to make something to eat. I don't know about you.
What are you gonna make?
Man, I got that country gravy down there with the sausage in it. Maybe I'll just put that on some rice, or maybe make some biscuits. I don't know. Feel like eating biscuits? Biscuits and gravy?
Not really. That seems like
so come up with something else.
Seems like a little much.
I'll come up with something.
I mean, we had like that big hunk of lasagna earlier today, and that's...
You had it. I didn't have that.
You didn't have lasagna?
Nope.
Oh.
No, I eat fucking Chinese leftovers.
Oh, okay.
Maybe,
It just seemed a little heavy, so I just like, you know...
I mean, I can come up with all kinds of stuff. Some rice and gravy would be easy to make.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that'd be easy.
Yeah. We'll see.
All right. So I guess. All right. So I guess we'll wrap it up. This was a fun show, I thought.
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking.
Got a lot of people in there watching it.
Well, yeah. See, I told you.
Okay.
Danny Rolling Bow says Tom break out the curly wig and memory of Bob
too late.
Ross.
It's too late.
See, I knew he was gonna be no fun.
Too late.
I knew he was gonna be no fun. I thought he was gonna put a wig on at some point, but he never.
I don't
did.
have that Bob Ross wig. I mean, I don't even really have a curly one.
Well, you have that curly like Michael Caine / Willy Wonka one.
Yeah, I'd have to dig that bitch out. I haven't been doing the wigs lately.
Yeah, what's the matter with you?
I don't know, man. Getting old.
He's no fun anymore.
Getting old, getting no fun. I'm fucking hungry though. Let's go ahead and shut it down.
He's fucking hungry.
She's trying to fucking continue the show up. I'm trying to get something to eat. Come on.
He's just gonna leave. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Hopefully you guys had fun. I had fun. I thought this was like a really interesting topic. So thank you to the people that suggested it, because I probably wouldn't have thought of it otherwise. But you know, I grew up watching this show, so I thought it was like really cool. So hopefully you guys thought it was cool as well. So have a good rest of your evening. Have a good day tomorrow. We will be back Friday night doing our fun Friday night sidetrack show where we'll drink some more and talk about a bunch of bullshit like we usually do. So other than that, like, have a good rest of your evening, and we'll see you on Friday night. Bye.